Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. We have a full house today. Okay, they're all excited. Good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started today with our work session. And as far as our discussion item, our first item that we have coming before us today is a charter review, the team's recommendation for charter. And Melissa, there she is, right? And Vicki Mays will bring those forward for us.
Good afternoon, Melissa Brady, Director of Charter Schools, and today I have with us Vicki Mace. She comes to us after retiring from Brevard County. She served 10 years there as Director of School Choice, and she's been with us as a consultant for charter reviews for the last 4 years. So Vicki today will be presenting the charter review team's recommendations to the superintendent for the applications that we received February 1 of 2018.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It's always nice to be back in Polk County. I said I know my way now. I don't have to use the navigation system. So I know my way. So this afternoon we're going to be talking about the 2018 charter applications. As you know, that we are required by law to look at these applications, and we have to use an instrument that is developed by the Department of Education. Each team, you have a great charter review team that I look forward to working with every year. We met twice this year, or this cycle, the 21st of February as well as March 19th. The group is comprised of many different members. Each of the members have an opportunity to independently evaluate the application. Then we come together, and before we take a vote, each member has an opportunity to advocate for the approval of an application as well. They do vote anonymously so that they can provide their honest, informed opinion. It's also, just to let you know, those that are new for the audience, you have key district staff, you have a community member, you have a charter principal that serves on that team, you have, I serve as the consultant, and as well as the Brevard, that's my own background, as well as Polk Charter Department. I serve as the external evaluator, and I think that that's great in your process, only because I look at the merit of the application. I basically open up that application provided by the Department of Education, and I go down to see whether or not the applicant has answered every question. The charter application review team actually brings their expertise and a different perspective. So together, I think we provide you a really detailed charter application for your review. We have 4 steps. The first step is the team gets together to review. The second team is the time we meet, we make a recommendation. Today we do the presentation, and a little different from the past. You actually are going to vote in step 4 today, or this evening, on whether or not to approve or deny 2 charter applications that we're presenting to you today. The Florida statutes guide us, and I just wanted to bring that back to you because there's no perfect application. You'll see if you look at the reviews, there's not a perfect application. There's going to be some partially meets. Occasionally there'll be does not meet, but those are in areas that are probably not as significant in the overall scheme of the charter application or the operation. Also, many times in that charter contract, you can remedy some of the things that we had issues or concerns within the charter application. So what we're looking for is the guiding principles. We're looking for a detailed curriculum plan. We're looking for goals and objectives that are actually measurable. And we're looking for a reading curriculum and differentiated instruction. Those students that are below grade level, as well as those that are on grade level, and those that are above. Also looking for an annual financial plan that's solvent. We're looking for anticipated fund balances, revenue projections that are relevant, probably realistic, and looking for descriptions of what controls they're going to utilize to monitor their financials. Also, we're looking for governing board members. We're looking for any proposed education service providers. We're looking for their academic and financial histories. All of that due diligence you can now incorporate into your decision and your recommendation. So it is now part of the application that we look at. And the law does allow you to ask for additional information, but Polk County does not choose to do that. Probably the reason, and I say this every time we get together, the budget is the part that we look at probably the most. As we read the narrative, we keep a running list of all the things they say they're going to do or purchase, and we try to see whether or not we can see that in their budget. Is there a connection between that narrative and that budget? Of course, we're looking for a solvent budget. As I've stated previously, most of the time charter schools get in trouble in the first 2 or 3 years of their operation, and generally it's due to finances. So fiscal responsibility is a critical factor of our evaluation process. This year we had 3 applications that are all applications that you had seen before. Best Career and Technical Vocational High School came to you in August of 2017 as grant. Bok Academy North also presented in 2017, as well as Language and Literacy Academy for Learning. This was previously our children's prep, came back, rebranded themselves, and presented a good application. We, one of the applications did withdraw, and that was Best CTE Vocational High School. So we only have 2 that we're going to talk to you about today. Bok Academy North is grades 6 through 8. It's looking at 200 students for the first year of operation. They would be 6th grade students, and it is replicating a high-performance charter school. Also looking at Language and Literacy Academy for Learning. Their grades pre-K through 12. They're serving an ESC student population, and they will have 305 students proposed for their first year of operation. Beginning in 2018, there was a new statute, and it says a sponsor shall receive and consider charter school applications received on or before February 1st of each calendar year for charter schools to be open 18 months later at the beginning of the school district school year, or to be opened at a time agreed to by the applicant and the sponsor. The only reason I bring this to you is that we are in the February 1st application cycle. Both of our charter schools presented to you today are requesting to open their doors for the 2018-19 school year, which would be, I think, August 13th for you all. And so what I just want to bring to your attention, because it will be your determination and your decision whether or not you will allow that, is just to give you some of the timelines of the things that must take place. And this, what I'm talking to you today, reflects the maximum time allotted by law. So the first part was a charter review. February 1st, we had 90 days to get that done, and April 24th, you're going to be within those 90 days. So the next part by law states that you have 30 days upon the approval of the charter application to provide a contract. So and that takes us to May 24th if you wanted to go to the very end, and we'll discuss if you don't go to the very end of that time frame. Then the law says you have 40 days to negotiate and notice the charter contract for final approval by the sponsor, unless both parties agree to an extension. So with that in mind, from May 24th, that takes you to July 3rd, which is 40 days. So if Melissa gives them the contract tomorrow, you could get that negotiated a little faster. I haven't discussed that with her, but I'm just giving you options. But then you would probably, if you put it out by April 25th, then you have 40 days. It would take you to June 4th. You have in front of you board meetings on June 19th, July 24th, and July 31st before school opens. And so depending on the negotiations of that contract, you will have to look at that time frame carefully and where it will fit into your board meetings and whether or not you can make that happen. So again, that is totally your discretion as a board, but we do need to make you aware that there are some statutory timelines in which we must abide by. However, there is a new statute that's coming out on July 1st, which I would have to refer to Mr. Bridges, but I don't think would be applicable to these applicants, because as of July 1st, they're saying that the charter school would open 18 months following February 1st, or a time decided by the charter school. So basically the law took the sponsor in determining when the charter school would open out of that equation. Since they're coming in on the July 17th application cycle, I'm not sure if that's applicable. If not only that, but if you are going to get the schools open for the beginning of this upcoming school year, you probably want to have your contract negotiations completed, and that would not come into play. But just to let you know, that law changed this year effective July 1st. Bok Academy North. So we're going to look at our first application.
Madam Superintendent, may I ask you a question? These are coming before the board tonight, correct?
These two are.
Okay.
All right. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think they're going for tonight.
Yes.
This would be your contract, coming back to approve your contracts, where you would have to look at the upcoming board meetings. The mission of Bok Academy, we're looking at their strengths. The core philosophy and underlying purpose of the Lake Wales Charter Schools to provide a coordinated, seamless education for kindergarten through post-secondary students, and I think that all of you have been able to witness that. The curriculum plan is they're looking at a vibrant arts program, exposing students to artistic endeavors and achievements from around the world. The curriculum continued. Again, they have that relationship with Bok Towers that interested me as I was reading that application. What a wonderful opportunity to have that relationship with Bok Towers. We did have some concerns about that relationship that was clarified in this application, how they would enhance their study utilizing the Bok Tower gardens. The student performance and assessment, they do present an understanding of academic accountability provisions and goals that are mandated by the state. The school culture and design, their teacher training is an essential component of their behavior management program. They do emphasize staff training for the entire whole child. And the governance, since the school will become part of the Lake Wales Charter School System for a nonprofit corporation, it will have its 501c3 status. Governance continued. It does provide detailed information about the qualifications and the credibility experience of their board members. The parent and community, they'll be asked to serve as mentors and tutors and guest speakers, so they will engage their parents in their curriculum. Human resources, they're going to be a public employer, therefore they're retaining, teachers and employees would retain their rights under the Florida retirement system. Professional development, they have an array of professional development opportunities already established. They'll utilize these same opportunities for the new staff. Food services, they're going to operate under the Lake Wales Charter Schools NSLP sponsorship, so that will not be a problem for them. Facilities, they are going to utilize a facility, the First Baptist Church of Lake Wales at 338 East Central Avenue. It is the same facility that they utilized when they opened Bok Academy years ago. So they're telling us that it would be an easy transition to utilize the First Baptist Church. Transportation, they do agree, Chapter 1006, there are no issues there. And they submit a plan that reasonably assures the safety of students and staff. And the best word we can use is reasonably. As we all know, that's a difficult task today. There are some concerns, and so I'd like to share those with you right now. Some of the concerns is that it repeatedly stated as a goal that it was going to provide minority students access to the scholastic program. And the latest SPAR report indicates that Bok Academy was significantly lower than the minority students in the district and state. So that continued to be one of the concerns. The target population that had attracted two groups of students, the target 1 and the target 2, that continued to be an area of concern. However, we have received, the superintendent has received a letter from Robin Gibson, who serves as their legal counsel, stating that basically if you approve this application, that they are willing to make the students of the Lake Wales area as their preference or priority enrollment. So what we're thinking is some of the issues that have come to the surface over the past will be remedied because they are willing to work with the district and trying to create a more diverse population. The educational program is interesting because last time they were talking a lot about iPads and just-in-time learning and taking the place of traditional textbooks. And they were also talking about a digital science program. But unfortunately, this language wasn't included in the 2018 application. And because they didn't participate in the capacity interview session, we were not able to ask them what their technology program is going to look like. So that remained a concern. The ESD students, they said that they were going to base it on Bok's current population of ESD students, which was plus or minus 7%. And this would equate to 14 students because they were going to have 200 sixth grade students the first year of operation. However, when I looked at the SPAR report, and the 2015-16 is the latest SPAR, and I even looked this morning, their ESD population was only 4.4%. But as we looked at their application and we looked at the revenue estimate worksheet, they actually projected 250 matrix level 251 students. So that's significantly more than the plus or minus 7%. And as a result, it has impacted their budget because they did overstate their revenue for their ex-ed. Their supplemental program, they have a robust offering of lots of different things from football to cheerleading to varied golf, tennis. And those are rather expensive endeavors, and we still have concerns because they said, we didn't see it in their budget, but we're told that there's business partners and the foundation also helps support that. But because we didn't see it in the application as being supported, we did include this in the PowerPoint presentation. However, supplemental programming is not one of those areas that you even score as meets the standard, partially meets the standard, it does not. It's not even scored as part of the application. It is just supplemental information. The governance, by law you only have to have one parent representative per school to be able to serve as the liaison. So they are not in violation of the law, but by their own accord in their application they stated that they were going to have two. But as you look, I created a chart, they're not having two at each, two parent representatives at each school. But they are in compliance with the law by having one. We're only bringing this to their attention because they're the ones who stated they were going to have two. And the other thing interesting too, I believe this is the second year in the reg, the management and staffing, we said that it didn't meet the standard. They didn't include any organizational charts, which are required. The law or the application states that you have to do pre-opening, and they specify what kind of organization charts to provide. The organization chart provided by Bok Academy North didn't even have Bok Academy North's name on it. So that was an area that we had a concern. Student recruitment and enrollment. Again, we were talking about their fair and equitable admissions and enrollment process, but I think that letter that you have received from their legal counsel will come back and give you the opportunity to negotiate in your contract their admissions and enrollment procedures. Their budget. Their budget is not solvent for the first year because of the ex-ed. It's $8,000 in the hole by our calculation. However, there is a law, statute 1002.33, parent 17B, that states that a not-for-profit entity, if they have leftover funding or whatever that's demonstrated by their annual financial report, that it can be shared between their schools. And so Bok Academy, or the Lake Wells Charter School System, as you know, they have healthy fund balances. So the committee didn't feel that this was a deal breaker, but they did want to just include it in the recommendation. So as you know, in the high-performing charter school, you can only deny it for specific reasons. And we are feeling, as a committee, that they did meet all of the statutory recommendations. There was nothing in the application that would state that we could deny it because it was a high-performing charter school. So there was no material misrepresentations. We felt that they were in compliance as far as their financial practices and their educational program. Therefore, the committee approved to recommend the Bok Academy North, 11 approved, 1 denied, 1 member abstained from voting. So that is the recommendation from this committee.
Okay. Are there any questions regarding the Bok? Ms. Summers?
My question is, are they going to do a true lottery system? Or are they going to be, out of the children that apply, are they going to be choosing who they want to choose? That, I don't know how. because that's the only thing, the target 1 and target 2 led me to believe that they would choose target 1 kids first now, which I didn't understand in the original contract, because they had said they would prefer Lake Wales students, but it was obvious when we did our research that they had not done that. So will they use a lottery system?
A lottery is typically used once all the seats are full. So what would happen is by statute, kids are already given priority to a charter school, and those priorities are things like you belong to a military family, you are an employee's child, you are a governing board's child, you are a sibling of a child who already attends. These are things that are already spelled out in statute. So when we're talking conversion charters, part of those priorities is also the school zone in which that school sits. For a startup school, like Bok North, they would have to specify if they wanted to take as priority certain students within a certain area. So that's the letter that that Vicki refers to states in there, and I have copies of it with me today. That it states that it says, I've been authorized to commit on behalf of Lake Wales Charter Schools that if Polk County Board grants the Bok North application, Bok North will in turn grant priority enrollment to Lake Wales area students at the school. So we would add that to their contract, that language. So it would be, we would go through all those priorities that's per statute, then that priority that they've just submitted in writing to us, because we're going to hold them to that commitment, and then once all those seats are full, then the lottery process occurs.
Can we get a copy of that letter? Thank you.
Mr. Townsend and Mr. Wilson.
So, is the reason, this is just, correct me on some mechanical understanding here, the reason the tier 1, tier 2 is still in the application is because of the replication requirements? Is it that they, to replicate Bok 1, they had to do essentially the same fundamental thing? Is that correct or no?
That was their perception of that, yes.
That was their perception.
That's correct.
Is that perception accurate?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
When you're looking at replicating, there are certain criteria for replicating a school, and that specific item doesn't necessarily.
But we can excise that tier 1 and tier 2 and replace it with priority in the negotiation process. Would that contract then come back to us to be?
Yes.
And in theory, not putting that in could be grounds. I guess nothing is going to be grounds for us to reject it. They're going to be able to go to Tallahassee no matter what they do. But if they were to not follow through on that as part of the contract, we could then vote against that, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to assume that those things that they have committed to, they will agree to in negotiations. There may be things that they do not agree to in negotiations, and if that is the case, then there's a statutory process to resolve those differences.
Secondarily, and just could Bok 1, the first Bok, could we, if they decided they wanted to do priority, the same way that Bok 2 is going to do, and we agreed, which we would, could they do it?
Yes, the modification to the contract.
We could do that tomorrow.
That's correct.
Okay.
They would have to agree to that modification.
They would have to.
No, it could, but if we agreed together, we could do it. Okay. All right, that's.
Mr. Wilson, then Ms. Rice.
Well, from a practical perspective, how do we ensure Lake Wales students are getting the seats? First and foremost, do we do that by area code? I mean, how do we do that?
I think that
Typically, how does it typically done?
I think the district can monitor their application process and see whether or not they are doing what they said they agreed to. I don't know if have you had practice doing that?
Well, we have requested that in the past at the board's request for other things, where we've asked for documentation that we don't hold. But of course, going forward, we most certainly can ask for that, do a public records request and ask for those things, and we can monitor it.
So is that based on what would normally be their normal school zone?
Well, I think that's a question that,
That we need to
the school
negotiate.
zone is a kind of a,
It doesn't
Okay.
exist.
yeah, and the
Right.
school zone for a startup school does not exist.
That's fine.
So part of what the startup school has to, like, they would have to agree, they have to put it forward to us, and that's what that letter was, is, hey, we will accept Lake Wales area. Now, how you define the Lake Wales area, that's a whole different, that's another discussion.
And that's really my question, is there been any discussion about that? Because it's too easy, if we don't define that, it's too easy to say, yeah, we're taking kids. And that's the concern I'm hearing from other folks, you know, that they will intrude on us. And I'm all for this, let me be clear, but I think that needs to be defined, and I said area code, I meant zip code, and I think that's probably the best way to do that.
If I may, Melissa's been working with Carolyn Bridges as well with that. And I don't know if Carolyn, and I know she kind of worked with them when they started the Bok one. Carolyn, do you want to add anything with that?
Just that we have the maps with the opt-out zones, so that we have the defined Lake Wales High School area. So if we use that as the map, then it would be simple enough to overlay the student addresses and look and make sure that all the students who applied that lived in the former Lake Wales High School zone received that first priority to attend. And then once we had 100% of those students accepted, then we could open it up to other students. But that would have to, I would suggest we would do that ahead of time as part of the contract negotiations and the discussion, because it's really difficult to go in afterwards and go, oops, we should have
Right.
taken this child. So I think there is a solution, and I think we can work through that in the contract.
Yeah, and that's my only concern, that
Right.
we clearly identify what that means.
Ms. Reynolds?
I will vote for this to get it through today, but if these provisions are not in the contract, I will not be voting for the contract, because that's the biggest problem, and I know Lynn's hearing it too, being from Winter Haven, that they're taking all of the Winter Haven middle school kids. So if that is not in the contract, that it has to be taking in that Lake Wales area first, and I really would like to go as far as, before they release their letters of you're accepted, we have to look and see that they've really done it, because like Ms. Bridges said, if they send out letters and then we catch that they haven't let in 30 students that should have been in, what do you do? So if it is not in the contract that not only they have to choose Lake Wales first, but that before letters go out to students, we get to verify that those kids are really, all of the Lake Wales kids have been accepted, then I will not be approving going forward. So I just want to make sure when you guys go in, I don't want you to be surprised, just so you know that going into it.
Mr. Harris, Ms. Phillips?
First of all, I'm very disappointed in the committee voting 11-1 to approve. I base that on the ESE numbers. They're severely lacking. How they can, in all honesty, say they are meeting the Lake Wales numbers, the district numbers, and hold their head up, I don't know. Secondly, they tell us they will provide 2 parents from each school, and they failed to do that. Is that a fraudulent view? Seems so to me. And third, capital expenditures. We've spent a lot of money providing seats in the Lake Wales community. There are plenty of empty seats at McLaughlin that need to be filled first before we go and add another school with additional seats in that community. So no, they don't have my support.
Ms. Fields?
Okay, I have a couple of questions. On the minority students, significantly lower compared to county and state, what strategies do they have in place? Do you know of any that they will use to hopefully get more minority students to participate? I don't remember seeing anything.
I don't have their application in front of me, but I do feel that they've got some marketing strategies. If you have if you're able to contract, do your negotiations to make sure it's a more fair and equitable application process to get into the school, I think you'll probably, based on just listening to the committee members, I think that those numbers perhaps will change, that it might be a better reflection of the community that it's serving. I do think that they are, I mean, it's the basic marketing, the array of activities that most of the charter schools do. But honestly, I don't have it in front of you.
That's okay.
To give you
I
anything
didn't see it, so
specifically.
I was just wondering. The other thing is, the parent representative, I agree with Mr. Harris, it needs to be two. And that will allow some type of hopefully minority representation. One limits that. And, I'm curious, do you have any idea as to why for the last 2 requests, 2 years, there's been no organizational chart provided?
Unfortunately, we weren't able to ask questions because they didn't participate in the capacity interview session. And so we have simply what was in the application is all that we can go on. So we were unable to get any type of clarifications regarding that issue.
Thank you.
The other thing that I probably need to bring to your attention is that when you're doing a replication of a high-performing charter school, there are only certain things by law that must take place for you to deny it. And it is the committee's opinion that they met the letter of the law. That when you look at these, that did they meet the application section 6? Yes. Did they meet section 9, which is charter school requirements? Yes. And so when you're dealing with a high-performing charter application, you're bound by legal statutes whether or not you have enough material information or material concerns that you can deny a charter application. Even though those are concerns, those are things that could be represented or looked at during your contract negotiations. And so that would be a good place as you're looking at the application process, also looking at if they say they're going to have 2, then make sure that the 2 is put into that charter contract, if that's what they're saying they're going to do. So you do still have the opportunity to go in and clarify and remedy some of these concerns in your contract. And I think that's what the committee felt that they, or not the committee, the team felt they could do.
Ms. Cunningham?
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. I think Ms. Bridges pointed something very important out in discussing how that zone would look like, because if you look at the children, the biggest issue has been that, you know, the kids that live in the Lake Wales community and the parents want those children to matriculate up from middle school to Lake Wales High School. And so I think if we are able to put that in, Ms. Brady, in our contract as we move forward, as she indicated, to maybe overlap the Lake Wales High School zone and then put Bok Academy North as part of that, however that would lay. I haven't seen that geographic representation, but it would seem to me that we would be capturing then as much as that enrollment would allow those kids in the community. And I think that's huge. You know, I don't know how much work that is. I don't know, as Mr. Townsend said, you go by zip code. I'm not really sure, but that seems like that's the major issue all these years, is to make sure that the kids that live there, go to church there, go to the grocery store, the families are able to matriculate up and would be in that zone rather than taking students from other communities. So that seems like a nice way to do it. I don't know if it's viable. Maybe one of y'all can get back to us as we move forward, if this gets approved today, and try to figure that out. Because I think that's huge, and I think that would really solve a lot of the issues that at least I have heard in this community in which I live. So I would be anxious to hear how that moves forward, because I really think that's an awesome solution. And I will be supporting this tonight. Thank you.
No, I'm
Okay. Mr. Townsend?
So, correct me on my math here, but they're projecting almost 20% ESE kids? 46 out of 250, that's...
I think it was like 23%.
What happens if they build that into their contract? I would, and then they actually have what current Bok has, which is 4% or whatever. Is that grounds for breaking the contract for us? What's the mechanism for dealing with that?
That's a good question.
It's the heart of charter law. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to. With respect, I was on the phone with the head of choice from DOE today, and like 3 times she said, "That's a good question." I mean, there is no law. I mean, it's all very frustrating. So, I want, let's hold them to that. If that's their application, let's put 20% ESE kids in Bok North. I want that in the contract. I want their application to reflect that. I will, that's an interesting point of view. And can I say, how is ESE defined? Is that EIP plus, IEP plus 504 or just IEP? What's the definition on it?
It's IEP, 504, and gifted.
No, because Bok's ESE is at 20% when you count gifted. Well, they said 7.7 or I'm sorry, 4.4.
But I mean, that's how it all falls under that same, then you have to break it out.
Oh, so they're projecting, that's not IEPs, that's gifted kids then.
They projected 46 251 level students, and so those would be ESC students.
But that's gifted
Yes,
includes.
both ends of the spectrum.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So
we don't hold them to that.
no, that has to be. So that's not.
Gifted versus.
All right. The way that reads on the presentation, it looks like you're, because they have.
Yeah, you have to break it out, and I wish I haven't had it somewhere.
So they're not projecting 20% IEP.
And that was the other issue with not having the session, the capacity interview. We didn't have an opportunity for clarifications.
Is the funding for gifted at the same level as IEP 504s? Like, so I mean, is for funding purposes of it? Sorry guys, I'm these
Carolyn's gonna answer a
Okay,
couple of
so
questions right there.
not an ESE expert, but in the past with charter contracts, students that have a 251, those are students with disabilities. And what I would suggest is in the contract, rather than sort of smush everyone together, if what I hear you
Right.
asking is
Right.
20% of the students with disabilities.
Correct.
So I think if we were to put that language in the contract, because generally gifted students are pulled out, I'm sure
They're not part of
they're
that
not part of
251.
that 251.
I will insist on that gifted kids are not counted in that 20%.
But then it wouldn't be the same number.
Yeah, I
You
just
can't ask them to
That's
have.
that's a federal definition.
Right.
Right, I don't.
That includes it all. The other
251 does
the other
not
thing that-
include
No.
gifted
Where
students.
we get hung up here,
Alright.
we can't control the applicants. They're projecting
Right.
numbers that they may receive and that they're
Get a
capable
breakdown.
of serving.
You can have,
But,
yeah.
but if the numbers vary up or down, that's not necessarily something we control contractually. We can require them to serve the students they say they'll serve, but we can't control the numbers.
Okay.
Mr. Wilson?
So this goes back to the question that Mrs. Cunningham asked, but at a higher level. The question is it possible for a charter school contract to stipulate roll-up into a particular high school?
Non-traditional.
So that makes it, so that may answer
No.
that question.
Yeah,
Use that
I would be very cautious that, and I'm sorry for interrupting, the word roll-up keeps being flipped around, and it has a particular meaning in this context. You cannot roll up
No.
a charter school student to
No.
a regular public school or vice versa.
I understand.
Does
That
it
was not my
change if we
question.
use the word
Yeah,
matriculate?
what the law says is that charter schools have to serve the broader community. They can give preferences here. That's all it says. The law also says that no child can be required to go to a charter school. Thus, you cannot roll up
Right.
a student from a regular public school. They have to apply and they have to be accepted through their application process in order to attend.
So, let me rephrase that.
It can't be done automatically.
Not automatically, but is it possible for those kids to get first preference at a
Well,
junior high school?
I think that's what we were talking about, saying that the preference goes to students in the former
In the
Lake Wales
area.
attendance zone. Well, that's for attending Lake Wales High School. By definition, certainly you can talk about the preferred attendance zones, but you can't roll up. That's a term of art that only applies
So,
to regular public school students who are assigned to school.
so I would draw the term roll-up.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, I understand. So, but.
I think it was the use of the term that's
Yeah,
gotten.
but I
gotten
would
confused.
like to see us write in the contract that they have preference at Lake Wales High School, and as I understand it,
And there are students
No.
attending
No.
McLaughlin that live outside
Right,
of the
right.
former
They
Lake
do.
Wales
Yep.
High School attendance
They
zone,
do.
and they would not get that same preference necessarily.
well,
And,
but again,
You
if
could
they,
have students attending McLaughlin that live in an entirely different community.
right.
right,
And they
Well,
would
neither.
not have the opportunity to,
but they don't live within that high
right,
school
they would not
zone.
be entitled to that
So
preference.
that doesn't change my suggestion, because they're not living within that high school zone currently.
But if they are, then they would automatically have that preference.
That's what I'm looking for. Is that
That we're right.
Preference to go to Bok North. I'm not looking at the
To
high
go to
school,
Lake,
I'm
to-
saying,
to go to Lake Wales High School.
Well,
I'm talking about the high school.
okay, I'm back to this. I'm back, my comment was based on the letter to ensure that the students attending this new school, should it be approved, Bok North, would be students from the Lake Wales area. And Ms. Bridges pointed out that the way to do that would be to possibly overlay the Lake Wales High School zone.
Right.
That's where I
Create a
was at.
geography.
Correct. And then, if you're done with that area that traditionally in the past was the Lake Wales High School zone, that means you live in the Lake Wales community. And that's been the angst all these years, because there's kids who live with a Lake Wales address and they're
Yeah.
going somewhere else, and then there's a Winter Haven address that has a seat at Bok now. That's the issue. So when
Agreed.
she's brought that up, that is a place to start.
No, and we're on the same page.
Yeah.
But what's happening currently is there are folks who live within that Lake Wales High School zone, but aren't being accepted to Lake Wales High School.
Okay, that's a different
different.
animal
I
for a
think that has
different
to be a
day.
different-
I agree, but
Yeah.
what I'm saying is if we
Yeah.
could tie that,
Yeah.
you can't tie
But
that.
I'm gonna talk about it today, separately, so,
Okay.
but,
Yeah.
I mean, some thoughts.
Sure, I understand,
But-
but I think this will go a long way in taking care of some of that, because when the time is to apply, okay, because they have to apply to go to the high school, some of those mechanisms will be in place. I do believe, I don't know, but
Ms. Reynolds?
I know you have the hardest job in the world, Melissa. I'm so sorry. But just in doing those zones, if we could be thinking about when these contracts are coming up for Lake Wales High School and Bok Academy, those schools, to make sure we already have what those zones would look like, so that we can just try and get them in those contracts when they come up, so that hopefully we're not just doing it for this one and then we're gonna have to reinvent the wheel every time. If we could do it all at once. I realize we can't just shove them into their contracts all today, but so that it's in the process and not, that would be very
They
helpful.
come up in 2023.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I'm
I'll
already
be
prepared.
I'll be the
you're in
ground.
charge.
Mr. Townsend?
You're in charge.
Just, can I revisit the ESC real thing, because
Yes.
we've got this up, all right. So level 251 is a designation, and that 251 designation equates to 4.4% of what current Bok has. Is that, do we agree on that? Is that correct?
Now, the reason I brought it back up is because they stated that they were gonna have plus or minus 7% of an ESC population. That means students with disabilities. When you look at their SPAR report, we looked at it because it was only at 4.4%. So we said, okay, 7%, they're probably about right. But when they projected 46 level 251 students, that's not gifted. Those are students with
That's my
disabilities.
question. That's my question.
And I clarified that with Jason.
Okay.
Oftentimes, here's what we see in applications. We often see that utilized, and again, we did not participate in a conference or an interview with them. So a lot of times we see numbers that are larger than necessary in the ExEd department, and it generates a little additional revenue. And so it could be that that was just a way to budget a balance, or that could be that's what they're really going to be going after, but we do not have that clarification because we did not have the interview.
Right, well, morally, we can hold that projection. I mean, Lake Wales is in a lot of ways different than a lot of the other charter organizations because it has a community in its name. And it insists that it's a community. One of the big contextual issues of the Bok McLaughlin deal is the disparity in ESC kids. This is a big deal. If they actually do 20% non-gifted ESE kids, it completely changes the character of the school. I would love to see them do it. If nothing else, we're going to remind them of this. We're going to talk about this. So that's what when I'm asking you this, I'm just trying to make sure I have their assertion correct. That this is not about gifted. This is about non-gifted kids, because I want to be able to talk about this in the future to come. Okay.
And sometimes, you know, I think the concern with the SE is a concern that goes across the state, that a lot of the districts and charter schools are trying to work together to try to be more proactive in that area.
We got the same problem with our magnets, and a number of them. So I'm not, this is not a charter exclusive thing. That's a very interesting number, and I want to.
I think it's a good topic of discussion around the state, not just in Polk County. Okay, Language and Literacy Academy for Learning. It took me a while to get that all in order. So let's see if we can do it correctly during the presentation. Just to let you know, this applicant, speaking to different folks on the charter review team, this applicant met with many folks in your district and really did their due diligence in trying to present to you a good application. So it's not often that you hear that they took the time to meet with the various departments. Their mission is to serve students with social, relational, behavioral, academic, and mental health deficits. They obviously have a true passion for working with this diverse type of population and should be applauded for those efforts. Their education aligns with their school mission. They state that all of their core and supplemental curricula were chosen because they were inherently designed for at-risk, struggling, and low-performing students. So you have a charter school that's reaching out, trying to engage in this particular population. They do utilize current research. We've had some that have presented as research from the 1990s, it seems like. So they're using really current research and presenting their theories and their program to us. Their curriculum plan does emphasize that their students, they are going to work very diligently to perform, have their students perform on grade level, and they do provide evidence that reading is a primary focus. They do present an understanding of the academic accountability provisions. They present a clear description of the programs, the strategies, and the supports that the school will have to support their students with disabilities. They said that the charter model being presented for consideration will plan to serve students with disabilities using an educational and both a therapeutic model. And just so I don't forget, it's interesting because we listened to this applicant in previous times try to justify why they were outsourcing or partnering with a certain entity that was going to provide services for them. And it's really interesting now that they've come and separated from that particular entity. They are saving lots of money by doing their own therapeutic services within. And so it was interesting because we laid the budget side by side and they're saving significant money by the way they're presenting the budget to you now and by the way they are doing a different contracting relationship, I guess would be the best way to say that. They do demonstrate an understanding of their legal obligations for their ELL students. Their school culture, they're going to try to have all of their staff certified as a practitioner in professional crisis management training. They do emphasize the whole child. Their governance chart, they do reflect identified key personnel. And just to let you know, our children's Winter Haven will close. The private school, we were told that it will close at the end of the school year. So we do now have that more confident understanding that that private entity will be closed and that this new entity as a charter school will hopefully or try to open the upcoming school year. Their professional development, they are going to have 60 hours of professional development. They do present an array of activities to recruit their students, their targeted population. The facilities, they are going to maintain the facility that the private school is currently in. It meets all the ADA requirements, so they don't see any reason why they couldn't transition easily without retrofitting or remodeling the current facility. Their school is equipped with security cameras inside and outside of the school, and this is also monitored by an established security company. Their budget. I have to say, this is probably the only charter school that I can remember in a long time that actually presented a budget at 75% of their population achieved and at 50% of their population achieved. Normally, we don't see that. They'll just say, oh, we'll adjust personnel. Well, of course you'll adjust personnel because that's your biggest expense. But this one actually presented what it would look like if they only got 75% of their kids and 50% of their kids. And so I just wanted to bring that to your attention because you don't see that very often. Their target population, some of the concerns. And again, these concerns are things that we think that could be worked out through contract negotiation. It was probably just an error, but they didn't target their student population. They didn't naturally roll their kids up. You know, like if you had 40 in 8th grade, and next year you'd have 40 in 9th grade. They didn't do that natural roll-up transition, which made their numbers a little bit awkward off, and I think they might have more kids than they anticipated. When we asked Dr. Callens about that, she was very honest in her response by stating that she was not involved in the charter application at that point and had not gone back to make that change. So that's something they're going to have to adjust. I do also, I think the team felt that their high school was perhaps last year, or the February or August 17, 2017 application, they were not going to high school. This application, they are proposing to go to serve students in high school. I think that their high school framework was probably the weakest part of their application, but there are laws that are going to govern how they're going to have to teach and how the students are going to have to meet certain standards for graduation. So we felt confident that they would come in and they would do what they needed to do. They listed all their assessments, their FSA and FSAA, as formative assessments. So they've got some learning to do as far as the different types of assessments to be offered. Again, we go back to high school, but during their actual conversation during our capacity interview, they did give a better understanding as to high school students with access points. Transportation. This was a little bit of a concern, and we don't have clarity here as I present this to you, even though it was brought up at the interview session. They say that they're going to have 2 buses, and then we know they're going to purchase 2 more buses. What we don't know is that we know those 2 buses are currently at the private school. We don't know how they're going to obtain those buses. Is there going to be a cost associated? If so, then that will impact their budget. There's also a concern by team members that even if they do have 4 buses, that it's going to be difficult to transport the number of students that they are proposing with only 4 buses, considering the types of disabilities these children will have. Food service. We don't believe that there was a cohesive plan to serve all students. I mean, obviously they want to have students, and they're going to have a population, significant population of free and reduced lunch kids, but they have not in their budget set aside a line item for that expense of feeding those children until they become their own sponsor. And that could be significant for them, and I say that as some experience I've had. I've watched a school be tremendously impacted by having to feed their kids until they got their sponsorship approved. So they're going back and they're having to look at that to readjust their budget. They do, however, in their expenses in the first year, they have $200,000 as revenue, and they're only using $45,537 of those $200,000 that they're for their startup. So they do have a little bit of cushion, and they also have about a $40,000 cushion as a net fund balance for their first year of operation. So they do have some wiggle room where they can go back and make some of these corrections and work on some of these issues. We talked about the budget. We are concerned because they are looking at 60% of their kids being economically disadvantaged. They will have to go back and work on that. They are going to utilize a contractor they're using at the private school, but the applicant does admit that she has not budgeted that part working until they become their sponsorship. The only other thing that they're going to work on, we talked about this at the capacity interview, is that they stated in their application that all the furniture and the staff office and equipment and those kind of things are going to be included in their lease agreement. The lease agreement that was provided in the charter application did not include these elements as part of the lease agreement. So it could also have a possible negative impact if they do have to go buy some FF&E But what they are going to do is go back and try to renegotiate that contract and make sure that this is included. The application review team is recommending the approval of this application, with 11 voting to approve, with 2 voting to deny.
Questions, Mr. Harris, Ms. Cunningham?
Under the application concerns, slide 47, I was kind of surprised and thought maybe you could clarify why, under application concerns, you would list that they plan to mirror the community's demographics. That seems a little bit counterintuitive to me, because we keep fighting to get schools to meet their community demographics. And here, you're saying that they plan to mirror the demographics, and that's a concern.
I'm sorry if that's the way that you perceive that. What I meant by that slide is that it's because they're going to have close to 60% of their children that are economically disadvantaged, they're going to have to be able to provide free and reduced lunch services to those children, and at the initial part of their school year. So until they become a sponsor, then they get their reimbursements at that point. So I didn't mean it as a negative thing that they're mirroring their demographics, though we applaud that. I was only saying that it's going to be difficult to feed those children when you have not budgeted for that as a line item. So I'm sorry if you misperceived that.
Ms. Cunningham?
Okay, on the budget slide, you said that they did provide modifications to the budget, looking at if the population is at 75% of projected as well as 50. Yes, that one. So my question is, how did that look? Are they solvent at both of those populations if they only get, let's say, worst case 50% of what's being projected?
What the applicants are utilizing is something from the Department of Education, and it's an Excel spreadsheet kind of thing. So as you put in one number, it adjusts it across the way. So it would adjust its personnel automatically, it would make the adjustments up and down.
Sure.
So it's a good tool for any charter school to use, because chances are you're not gonna come in at 100%.
No, never. That's why I wondered. So even at 50 or 75%, they look good?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it automatically adjusted
accordingly.
for them, and then they can go in and massage it.
And do what they need.
Yes.
Super, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Wilson?
So you may have covered this, and if you did, I apologize. Can they continue to accept McKay scholarships? No? Not now that they're getting FTE?
If they become, so they are currently a privately run school that accepts McKay scholarships. McKay is a choice option, and so you can't have two choices, and so you can't go to a charter school and receive McKay.
For now, at least.
Yes, yeah.
Ms. Fields?
You had reference that they might not be able to start. You said something like you weren't really sure they were gonna be able to start as they had anticipated, and they were gonna close the existing school. Can you kind of talk a little bit, help me understand that?
And Melissa might be able, because she's had more conversations, but we've been informed that the private school entity will close, because that's always been a concern, and then they will open up as a charter school. So they have it as the private school will close at the end of the school year, this coming school year, or what is this, April, May? Close in May, and then the charter school would open as a charter entity in August.
And so it's anticipated they have everything in place to do that.
And one of the things this time, instead of, one of the concerns last time is they were gonna go KA, and you were still going to have a private entity at that same campus, and there was great concerns about commingling of money and those kind of things. So there will no longer be a private school entity at that facility, and it'll be a K-12. So it'll be a smoother transition, and then we won't have to worry about the private and the public entities under the same roof.
Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you, Vicki.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Melissa, you have item 2, which is right behind you.
Can I ask you a question? Are we moving on to the next item?
Yes,
Then my question is, what is superintendent's recommendation on both of these charters?
it was to approve
Both.
to
Okay.
uphold the committee's
To uphold the
decision.
committee's decision. Okay, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the record, there is a currently outstanding appeal from Bok North. You'll remember we denied the application last year. It was fully briefed back in December, and it just went into the ozone.
Right.
And last month we received a notice that the state board would hear it in May if it's not approved. So if it's not approved, we'll go up and talk to the state board on May 16th.
And if it is, that goes away?
It goes away.
That is my
100%.
understanding. I think it would be mooted at that point.
Today, I'm bringing forward 2 contracts that will be voted on during the May 15th board meeting. One of them is from Polk Charter Academy. It is a brand-new contract with a new school, and Discovery Academy of Lake Alfred, which is an existing charter school in Polk County, and they are asking to renew their contract. To begin, I want to start with Polk Charter Academy. They are a school that is managed by Charter Schools USA. They are a high-performing replication application, and they submitted their application August 1, 2016. The district denied the application on September 20th, 2016, but the District Court of Appeals ruled in favor of the charter, and the mandate was issued on March 8th. Per statute, the district has 30 days to present a draft contract to the charter and 40 days to negotiate and approve. May 15th is the 40th day, so therefore I bring this forward today. Polk Charter Academy was replicating a school in Hillsborough called Winthrop Charter School. It has consistently been an A school since 2013. They are asking to open with grades K through 8. Their first year they would open with grades K through 6, and they would like 661 students. Their second year would be 903 students with K through 7 students. Third year would be 1,145 students, and they would serve grades K-8. They would like to open next year, 2019-2020, but a new statute applicable July 1 of 2018 will allow them to defer up to 3 years.
So not this August, a year from August.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Mr. Townsend?
This is Jamie Grant's charter school, right? The guy from the one we had the big fight over, right? The South Lakeland one.
South Lake.
Yeah, is this the South? That's what my question.
This is the profitable groups one.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
The Shepherd Road one?
Shepherd Road.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't recognize the
Okay.
name. We'll talk about the location as part of the contract.
Okay, Mr. Wilson?
This may be a rhetorical question, but if the state is forcing us to accept this charter school, one we don't need, why are they forcing us to vote on it?
Well, we still have, there still has to be a contract.
So what if we say no?
Right, what if we say no? That's my question.
We'll have consequences.
Which are what?
Which are what, right? It was ridiculous, and it's ridiculous.
I can't tell you what the consequences would be because I don't know that anybody's ever refused it. One legal possibility is they file a writ of mandamus in the courts to force the school board to do as they have been ordered to do.
I'm all for that.
Yeah, me too.
The
It's ridiculous.
that is a decision for the school board, but the ruling that came down from the Second District Court of Appeal said that you must do it. So we've been ordered to do it by a court.
Let them open it. They're so smart.
Mr. Townsend?
So if we made a motion to say, we recognize your power to compel us to do this. You send us a writ to do it, we'll do it, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, it would be there is more to it than that. And the other side of that is you've got to, I hate to bring it up, but you swore an oath as an elected official to support and defend, and that is one of those things that failure to do so could have consequences.
But the other piece of this is you take an oath to do what's best for the children that we serve. And when we, as a 7-member board, voted back then and felt that this entity did not rise to the occasion
Yes,
of
ma'am.
something that we would embrace and would help our kids.
Yes, ma'am.
So My
Yeah.
question is, if we did do something as he's proposing, that says, yes, if we're mandated, we will, but here's how we feel, because they haven't proven to us that they're bringing something new and different as an entity, and particularly in the area that they want to
Yes,
open.
ma'am. I think that,
I mean,
what the State Board and the District Court of Appeal have said is that they're satisfied that they've met the requirements. They disagree. And of course, the Constitution provides roles for the local district school board as well as the State Board of Education when it comes to the approval of charter schools. I don't know what would happen if you did not do that.
Has
It
anyone
could-
not followed through on that mandate
Not to my knowledge.
in the state of Florida?
Not to my knowledge. I would not.
Just curious.
I would always hesitate to advise a client against the order of a court that has jurisdiction over it.
Over us. It's absolutely ludicrous, and it's not in the best interest of the children that we serve, and that is the oath
Yes, ma'am.
that we've taken and that I take very serious, so.
This was some kind of
Move on.
resolution where we say
It's awful.
approve it, and we're doing this under protest.
You can,
Yes.
you can certainly do that.
Okay.
You know, I take your point. There were reasons that you
There were.
didn't like the
Many.
application in the first
Many.
place, and those reasons have not abated. But we have been through the process, and
Here
we
we
are
are.
where we are. One other thing that I would mention to you is that now, formerly, if you had contractual disputes, they went to the Charter Appeals Commission. They don't anymore. They go straight to DOA, and the prevailing party is entitled to attorney fees. So if you go up and lose,
More money.
yes, ma'am.
Mr. Wilson?
Mrs. Brady, is it imperative that we approve this one tonight?
May 15th.
So I would propose that we draft a resolution and present that and vote on that the same night that we approve this.
That
That's
essentially
great.
says that we're doing
Yes.
this under protest, that we disagree
In a nice way, and why?
with the outcome.
Yeah.
We can work on that.
So can we pull that from the agenda this evening, please?
It's
Oh, it's
not.
not-
no,
It's
it's
not.
not on the
It's
agenda.
not.
My mistake.
This is,
Yeah,
It's not on the agenda.
we will, we'll draft something for you in advance of that. Thank you.
Ms. Sellers?
I believe district people talked with this charter company, asking them to please build in the northeast where we
Correct.
have a critical need
Correct.
for a school. Is that still an option with them? Would they consider
No.
building this school where we absolutely need it?
I can answer that.
They've already said.
I can answer that, because I met with them for that exact reason, being that I represent the northeast part of the county, and even talked about sites, even talked about developers donating land, and on, because that's where we need classrooms. And I was told point blank, no, we're not interested in that area of the county. And that can be part of that resolution that we tried to work
Absolutely.
with.
I think it should be.
Don't mind it if you can put it where the need is, but where you're looking at putting it, there is absolutely no need except for the gain of profit.
Any other questions on this one?
I'll just go very quickly through these. You know, there were very few edits that were made to this contract. The contract is the standard contract that has been now given to us by the state. It is very specific to statute, so whenever we approve a charter application, that's the first appendix that is attached to this contract, because we actually use the approved application as really the crux of the contract. So there are a lot of references back to the application throughout the contract, but just very quickly, they're asking for a 5-year term. They did ask that we change the language on page 2 in section 1, it's the bottom paragraph, to say that the 5-year term of the contract shall not be reduced by utilizing the planning years. So, which means that that if they take those planning years, those years don't tick off of the contract. The contract would then begin after they've had the planning. On page 11, section 2C, They will not adopt the sponsor's student progression plan. Charter Schools USA has one that is very similar. It's got a few, and that is completely optional. They don't have to. They've got a few more requirements than the district does. On page 28, section 5, this was the location of the school. They did not have a location. They told us that they could give us a parcel number, and they did actually give us two locations. One of them, they were going to go back and renegotiate with the folks on Shepherd Road. The other one was going to be in the area of Davenport, so I don't know what's happening there, but those are just the things that they've told us during the negotiations. So we felt like we could put in this section, the school shall notify the sponsor with an address as soon as a location is determined, but not later than 6 months prior to opening in order to accommodate a sponsor's planning. On page 30, their reasonable distance for transportation will be defined as 2 to 4 miles, which means that they would not inhibit, that would not become a barrier for students attending the school. But we know, according to their application, that they were not going to have any type of bus transportation. It was going to be parent contract only, and the only bus transportation that would be provided would be per statute. Okay. On page 35, section 9A, they will be a private employer. Their teachers will not buy into FRS or anything like that. Any questions?
Mr. Harris?
Discovery Academy of Lake Alfred, do they have a principal?
Yes.
Do they have someone in a position over the principal but not a board member?
I believe that Carol Folks is not a board member per se, but she does sit on the board as a representative.
So in other words, another title would be superintendent of one school. Good thing for the taxpayers to know, this school is choosing to spend taxpayer money to pay for a superintendent of one school. Thank you.
Are we talking about them now, or are you gonna?
You gonna introduce them? Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. Discovery Academy of Lake Alfred, they have just completed a 9-year contract. It expires on June 30th. They opened in 2001. They have been a consistent school in school grades. They received only 1 C in the last 5 years in 2014. They are requesting a 15-year term. The statute does allow a renewing school to request 15 years when the school has received a grade of an A or a B in 3 of the past 4 years. I just wanted you to make that clear. Some contract specifics, and there really weren't a lot. There were very few changes, and they were all non-substantive. So they will continue to serve students in grades 6 through 8. They will currently reside where they always have been. They plan on implementing the sponsor's student progression plan, which they have always done. And they also ensure that transportation is not a barrier to equal access. They do have 23 of their own school buses, and they do transport students from anywhere from 1.5 miles all the way to 23 miles out.
Any other questions? Mr. Townsend?
Help me on this. It's on the history. They're a conversion, right? They converted at some point back. Okay. That used to be our school. Okay. Last time we talked about them, you mentioned the 30 kids they had gotten rid of, and the 30 other that had voluntarily left.
Yes.
60 kids out of, I don't know how many they have. I don't see any points in the contract addressing retention. Nothing, is it safe to say nothing's been added in that way?
Well, the contract, if you look at the contract on page 18, actually starting on page 17, the contract does outline what a school can specifically do as far as dismissal policies and procedures. It's L, it's at the bottom of page 17, and then it goes through page 18. It talks specifically about the school making parents aware of parent contracts, if there are parent contracts, and I actually requested their parent contract for this year. Also, whatever their behavior policy is and what their procedures are, and I requested that as well, because I thought maybe you would ask for it. They have it laid out for how students would go through a particular progress with a teacher a mentor. They have checkoff sheets that they're rated for how, you know, in each class, how they have behaved. So it's a quite rigorous. I'll give you a copy of it so that you can look at it before over the next few weeks. But we felt confident that with those two things in place, that how it's going forward. I mean, it's according to what, you know, statute allows them to do in dismissing students, and the language that's in the contract and also in statute, that they're not doing anything outside of what they are allowed to do per statute.
So it's your opinion as our charter person that getting rid of 60 kids is completely legal?
Well, no, that's not my opinion at all.
That's there's nothing that they're doing that we could challenge.
I did do some deep diving into each one of, not the 60, but the 36 students who were dismissed, to find out where they are currently and how they're doing. Are you interested in that information?
Well, yeah, I'm interested in that, but I'm more interested in, you know, I was again speaking to the head of DOE's choice today specifically about discovery. Actually, was trying to get a sense of if this meets the state's intent.
Yeah, if the school engages in conduct that is discriminatory in nature, if they engage in conduct that is illegal in nature, we can absolutely crack down on that. We do have that oversight capability. We would have to show it.
Well, what's showing it mean? Like, what's is there a racial pattern to the kids that are being?
No. And I can get you the percents because I ran it all.
It'd be interesting.
And discrimination takes in a whole lot more territory.
I was just asking.
So,
yeah, no.
Yeah, if it appears that they are discriminating against people based on disability, that is absolutely actionable. That is absolutely something that we can come down on like a box of rocks.
Mm-hmm. I do have a letter from the principal addressing your concerns from the last board meeting as well, so I have that available to you. 5 of those 36 students have returned to Discovery and are doing very well. I know it's only 5, but
Ms. Cunningham?
Okay, going back to the top area where it says, shall be granted to a charter school that has received a school grade of A or B, blah, 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 pursuant to, in 3 of the past 4 years. So we have 3 Bs, but the year before that was a C. So my question is, I know they're asking for a 15-year, based on the additional information that we may receive, would it be an option to provide a renewal but not for 15 years for a time period less than that until some of this stuff can get cleaned up? So there is that provision to go less than 15 but still renew. What options do we have? I mean, from 5 to 15?
This is also May 15th.
Pardon?
This is
Yes,
also
May 15th. Yes.
Yeah, May 15th, yes.
it can be 5,
10,
10, and this one was
anything.
9.
Okay,
I don't-
okay,
So the board has.
Just curious.
They can
The
set
board
the
has-
term of that.
okay.
Okay. Ms. Sellers?
They're not many of the charters ask for the 15 years because they want to build and get loans and they
Right.
need it. But
They don't.
there is
They don't.
none of
Nothing
their
here.
conversion, it's our building,
Mhm.
and they're not planning on,
No.
so there's no need for the 15 year.
Yeah, it's not for expanding and trying to get finance.
Ms. Reynolds?
Do you have a recommendation on this one already for us, or?
This one doesn't come until the 15th.
Okay, so we won't have a recommendation on it until.
Right, that's correct. Mr. Wilson?
So the contract says the school may not withdraw a student voluntarily for poor academic performance or for a minor infraction of the school's code of conduct. The school will ensure that no pressure, coercion, negotiation, or other inappropriate inducement may be used to attempt to have parents, guardians withdraw students from the school. It seems to me that the most appropriate avenue for some sort of repercussion would come from parents and students complaining. And have we had that? Has that occurred?
No, and I actually have a copy too of their due process. So if a child is dismissed because they've not been able to be successful on their behavior plan, they call it the relationship plan. It's in the faculty handbook, and it talks about student mentors and that type of thing. Then there's a document that is provided to parents in the student handbook about due process and how they go through that in order to ask for the child to remain at the school.
I mean, I have concerns, like everyone else, about the number of students that are leaving for whatever reason, but, you know, if we're not hearing complaints from parents, there could be a lot of reasons for that happening, I'm assuming.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Melissa. Let's take a 10-minute break and
Yes,
we'll
ma'am.
resume at 2 o'clock.
Thank you.
The next item. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started as we still have a couple more lengthy items to go. The next item before you, Dr. Akes will bring forward is the education directions.
Good afternoon. Before you, school board members, I placed at your station a copy of the contract that myself and Mr. Bridges have worked through with education or directions. I just wanted to kind of give you some background and we'll step you through, I guess, some of the mechanics of the contracts of questions that I think that you would have, and maybe things that I had anticipated on there that Mr. Bridges and I had worked through with them. As you'll recall, we started the process of vetting out and reviewing different external operators. We come upon the one that we thought that had the best mechanics and would meet our needs with being effective at moving schools within our school district, educational directions. As you remember, this was brought upon by a recent change within the legislation that we needed to have an external operator for schools that had more than a DRNF more than 2 years. So when looking at this contract, one of the things that I wanted to share with you was at the beginning of it, when you look on page 1, down there at number 2, letter B, one of the things it talks about, and you'll see consistently in the language on this contract, is that educational direction in the Polk County School District will be working collaboratively with these schools. I think this is really important to point out. And the way that I guess I would preface it, or the way that I would kind of think about it, is, you know, when the legislation talks about, you know, an outside entity more or less running a school or a school district, there's a little bit of a caveat that needs to be discussed with that, and that is this. You can always delegate authority, but you cannot delegate responsibility. And I see it, and I believe that y'all agree that the responsibility of educating the students of Polk County is our responsibility. And I think that we all take that very seriously. And I think that that's one thing that we look at when we tried to create the contract that I think is actually a win-win situation, and a piece of legislation that I'm not sure that we agree with, but I do think that it's a good thing. When we're looking at this, what we want to be able to do is leverage this resource to improve our schools. Consistently, I've had the question, by doing this, are we saying that the Polk County School District cannot improve our schools? That's not the case. I think our track record has proved that. You know, as far as the number of Ds and Fs we've been able to reduce, in the last year alone, we went from 31 D or Fs down to 18. I think given time and adequate number of resources, we'd be able to do that. But here's the kind of the problem that we run up against, even if we didn't have this situation that we needed to look at. When you're trying to hire outside coaches, you know, outside people to work on this, the pool is very shallow out there. You know, we're having a hard time just being able to hire coaches. You're having a hard time making sure that we get principals in school. That's a reality for education today. So really, I look at this as an opportunity to bring in and leverage outside resources and be able to accelerate the improvement within our schools. This is a group that we've worked with, that we have a proven track record with. So I think there's a relationship and a trust there with this group. So I'm excited about what we've been able to work out together and provide for you today. You know, quite often when you don't have the resources within a big organization, you do leverage for outside, you know, resources, whether it's, we need to get electrical contractor in, we may do maintenance and repair, but when you're trying to do a big project, you're going to do an outside company for this. This is the same thing. I do think this is a win-win situation, even though we may not agree with the legislation up front. So again, as you're looking down through here, you'll see the word working collaboratively with it. I know that on page 1, there's the actual start date is May 1st. We moved that back from where it was originally brought to y'all because of just needing to make sure the mechanics of the contract was amenable to everybody. Page 2, to me, this is really critical. Letter D is the availability of funding. There is a clause in here, if the availability of funding is not there, then that would be a cause for us to revisit and be able to renegotiate or get out of this contract. That's in 2 places on page 2, and I think that's critical considering where we're at with funding and the concern for that. And I just wanted to make sure that I pointed that out. I know that you've probably been able to peruse it online, but there's some other pieces on down in here that I wanted to work out and look at with you. Page 7. And it's really important to me what, on page 7, some of the just caveats that Mr. Bridges included in this, and I think that it kind of goes back to something that's already been discussed within the board meeting today. Page 7, letter L, it says both parties shall comply with all federal, state, and local laws. Okay, one of the things that we want to make sure of is as we go forward is that you know, we're working together to adhere to all law and legal practices that are in both local and state, and that's really important because this is a piece of legislation that affects this. Page 9, you know, the list of schools have been specific from the get-go, the ones we would be looking at for this possibly needing to take effect. But page 9 actually lists the possible schools. And the one thing that Ms. Bird wanted to ensure that was in there was that if any of these schools make a C or higher grade this summer when the new school grades come out, that we wouldn't be held to having an external operator in these schools. And this actually states that in there. The exact list of schools and services and levels of service will be agreed upon in writing before the service begins. So when we get into the July and the exact list comes out, we will actually create that list, define the services, and begin work with the external operator in the schools that are needed. And so these are the schools that would be the schools that we've talked about since the get-go: Kathleen Middle, Lake Alfred, Lake Marion, Bartow Middle, Garner, and Griffith. That would be possible for an external operator. But, you know, we are banking on the fact that our track record alone in improving schools, that we should be able to greatly diminish this particular list. So, you all right? Page 10 is a page that, working with educational direction, I think it actually captures the level of services that we're talking about with our schools that we're trying to improve. We've been working with educational directions in a capacity of an AMO, or an academic management organization, where we bring them in to actually do leadership and teacher coaching on and above what we were providing with the district. But what it actually defines here are the tiers of services that we would provide, whether it would be a Tier 3 school, which would be the external operator, or a Tier 2 school, which would be in year 1 or 2 of that top, and that would be an AMO, or a school that exited these particular levels, and you just want to ensure that they continue to improve. So this particular page actually defines the level of service that we'd be expecting to provide our schools as we go through this process with them. Again, I think this just shows our commitment to also help our schools, not just as they struggle with the D or an F, or they go into needing an external operator. It's what are we doing to ensure that all of our schools are improving, and if there ever, you know, if there's extra coaching that's needed above and beyond, that we would do that. Any questions on page 10? Okay. Page 11 kind of defines services, different roles that they would have. Page 12 actually talks about some services that we would begin in the spring of this year where we would do needs assessments. I think one of the things that is critical for this, if we have a school that we're struggling with, that we're actually in there earlier, that we work with educational directions to do an evaluation of where their current state is, and moving into the school improvement process in June and July, then they would be prepared to work extensively as an external operator in July, depending on those school grades. As you can see, again, in this contract, in bold print there, where it talks about spring of 2018, and this is one of the things that Ms. Bird was very specific about, that she wanted Mr. Bridges and I to work in there, is it talks about the exact services and the amounts will be agreed in writing before the services begin. Again, we can take and put the amount of service, the amount of evaluation needed in our schools as defined by our needs, and we can do that once this contract is actually executed. Okay. Page 13. It talks about the level of service that an external operator would be providing, the number of days. One of the things that you had noticed that's different than what we've been providing with the AMO services, that there will be more instructional coaching on top of what our district will be providing. I think that's what actually brings about that I'm excited about being able to accelerate the improvement within these schools. And it also leverages district-based days where we can then say, you know, Ms. Bird could work with the regionals and say, I want more support in this school, or we want to be able to move support around, so I'm excited about that. At the bottom of page 13, it actually talks about the total amounts that would be available for these contracts. For the spring work, which it talks about 2017-2018, the total amount should not exceed $300,000. And for each year, for the 18-19 school year and 19-20 school year, 2.1 million would be the maximum that this contract could be for each of those school years respectively. And what we're kind of doing there would be the worst case scenario. If all 6 schools did not improve, you know, 350,000 times those schools. So again, this is very similar to other contracts we've done, to where it has a ceiling, to where you as a board know, okay, this should be the maximum amount. But again, no services would begin until the superintendent signs off and agrees upon these are the services needed at those particular schools. So I like the flexibility, and I like the way that we've been able to work that piece out. Page 14 to me, while it's just a graphic, it clearly to me shows that we'll be working collaboratively with educational directions. The first graphic talks about the external operator, where it shows ed directions and Polk County schools working side by side up under the DOE. And then the AMO structure, where it actually shows that it's the DOE, Polk County schools, and then ed directions. And then for the IT support, as a school exits the external operator, it actually shows that the educational direction is lower in the hierarchy, providing support directly for that principal. So again, the contract provides flexibility. It does allow us to tier support and target support, and I think that's what Ms. Bird and the school board was wanting. I think that there were some questions that probably would arise that we want to be able to clear up right off the bat with this, is that, you know, what about the employees of the schools? All the employees of those schools still remain Polk County School District employees. You know, they work with us. There's nothing changes with that. Well, who directs those employees at those schools? That principal still is going to be the evaluator and the director of those employees. Well, what about leadership at those schools? That's going to be a collaborative effort that we work with together, just as we currently have. You know, if the superintendent or ed directions has a concern in any of those capacities, it would be a collaborative effort together. because both the responsibility of improving those schools and the education of those students still lies with the Polk County School District, but also educational direction knows the importance of these schools moving forward. I have a lot of faith in the company and the work that we've done with them, and a lot of trust back and forth with that. I do think that the superintendent has shown that there's not hesitation if a move's needed in leadership. She's able to take that. So I don't think that that's an issue with this board and with the superintendent.
Okay, great. Any questions for Dr. Aitken? Mr. Harris, then Ms. Cunningham.
Just a clarification, on pages 11 and 13, two different terms, and I want to make sure that if they're not interchangeable, that I understand them. On page 13, district-wide site manager days shows 64. I'm looking on page 11 under services, and it looks like that might mean the site director. Is that the same site director and site manager days? Is that what that's referring to? Is that site director?
Right. And what they would, what's unique about the way we could do these is that these particular days could be directed by the superintendent as she sees that more is needed at a particular school or a particular area. So they're more flexible, and that's the unique piece of this contract.
So our 12-month employees have a 247-day contract year. That means 1 out of every 4 work days that person would be on site then, approximately.
Yes, sir. It would be a lot more intense than what we currently have with that AMO support we got. Yes, sir. They will be.
So almost once a week on average is when
yes, sir.
These people would be expected.
They talk about the ebb and the flow of the school improvement process on the front end. Would that be probably every, 4 days a week in there? But as you move through the year, then it's going to look like gradual release. It may be back and forth, but that on average you're there 2 or 3 days a week.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Cunningham?
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Okay, so we've been contacted, at least I have, by entities in our district that live, work, and perform here, some of our charter schools, about the option of them doing this in place of educational directions.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I want to be very clear. Is it true then, because this is how I kind of explained it, with educational directions, we are employing a third-party consultant, if you will, to come in and help us to achieve those goals. But at the end of that time frame, the schools, the personnel, the everything is Polk County School Boards, correct? Whereby if you contracted with another entity, it would become their school. So I'm trying to get that out there to the public. So
that was
tell me if I'm right.
Yeah, that was something that was a concern from the very good, the very start.
Yes.
In other words, what's the pros and cons of doing a district managed charter versus doing
Yes.
an external operator? And that's why we, really felt when we looked at it or talked about it at the board and with the superintendent, we wanted our employees to stay our employees and those schools to remain our schools. Because again, they are our responsibility. And I would have the expectation, if I was the person in charge of that charter school, that I would have to have a 5, 10, or 15-year contract, just like they've discussed before us.
Sure.
So, great clarification.
Okay,
yes, ma'am.
so this is a contractor coming in to help us in those 6 schools. If it is, hopefully it's 0, but, okay. So at the end of that term, when those schools turned around, they revert to Polk County School Board. They are ours to begin with and through the whole process.
That's a great clarification. At no point during the process do they ever leave under the jurisdiction of the Polk County School District. They will continue to be our schools, our students, our staff.
Okay, next question, sorry, have a couple. So, when we look at the finances, I noticed that the contract starts May 1.
Yes, ma'am.
Which is right around the corner.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's say, okay, 3 of the 6, I'm just the number, 50% rise above C and we're done. The 3 that need educational directions, it may only be 3. How does that 2.1 million become reduced? What is the stipulation? What if we only end up with 1 school that they have to come into? Help me.
Okay, so this
Help me
is,
understand.
okay, the 2 pieces in here that we talked about, and I'll go back to them. At the top of page 12, in bold print where it talks about in the spring of 18.
Yes.
It says the exact services and amounts will be agreed upon in writing before services begin. In other words, this is a scope of work.
Right.
These are the things we can do for you.
Right.
And the next thing that'll happen would be, Ms. Bird will say, at this school, School A, I want you to do A, B, and C. You already got a price list here. We would go do those things.
For that amount?
Yes, yes, ma'am. And so in July, when the school grades come out, then it becomes very specific. We've done the front work, which is our precursor to the school year.
Sure.
And then the schools that need the external operator, that would be the services we put into place as soon as those school grades come out.
Okay.
Schools that exit, we would probably do some what we call light touch support as they exit.
Sure.
Schools that are have had a D or an F that are not external operator schools, we would probably do an AMO support.
But my question is, because this document is going to be signed, it is effective, it says this contract shall take effect May 1.
Yes, ma'am.
Not July 1. That's my concern.
Yes, ma'am, but it's still, that's the ceiling on it, that's the most it can be.
Okay.
It doesn't say that each year you will be paying them 2.1, it just says that's the ceiling, the
That
most
it could be. Okay, just making sure. All
Yes,
right,
ma'am.
sir. Thank you so much.
No, that's a great clarification, and believe me, that was the benefit, and again, that relationship we have with Ed Directions, nobody else would have been willing to do that.
I understand.
You'd have been
Thank you.
committing.
Ms. Sellers?
I just, I'm supportive. I know we're all upset with the state mandating, but I will tell you, I can't thank you enough, Ms. Bird, and you, Dr. Akes, and our attorney, because this actually, as I look at this, actually gives authentic support, which I know we've talked to the legislators. When we have schools with the numbers of children that are desperately below grade level and need help and need support, and if you'll notice, poverty plays a huge role in our schools that get this. You have designed this to really give authentic support to those schools. So while I know we get irritated when we're mandated, but our district has really turned it into something that I can believe will actually support the schools. And I don't know that any school would really be upset with the kind of support that I see this document is providing. So I want to thank you, because there was not another external operator that gave us the prices and the collaboration that this one has. So we would be very foolish not to accept this, because we're not going to get another external operator. I think we saw that at the initial, that would provide us the kind of services that actually I believe will support our schools.
Ms. Fields?
If my memory serves me correctly, when we went before the state board for the turnaround schools, this group went with us. They went with us to South Florida, and also we went to St. Augustine.
Correct.
And they were very supportive, and we have a very good relationship with them. And then based on where we found ourselves, I think this is a win-win situation for us. I want to reiterate what Ms. Sellers said. Dr. Akes and Ms. Jackie, thank you all for working hard to make sure that we have a way out and that we're not locked into to this contract. And I have spoken to the principals at both of the schools that's in my district, Kathleen Middle and Griffin Elementary. And they are very complimentary and very supportive of the staff from Educational Directions. And they are confident that they will not need to have them beyond July 1, whenever the grades come out. So we're believing that a lot of our schools will not have to be under this. But if it is, at least we have a good relationship and it's strong. And so I will definitely be supporting this as well.
Thank you, Ms.
And thank you all for your work.
Thank you. Mr. Townsend?
Couple of things. Just a dumb question to start with. Does DOE sign off on this? I mean,
We have not sent it to the board until it's approved by the board and goes for a vote for the board. It'll go to DOE at that time.
any reason to believe if it's approved they won't? I mean, have they given indications?
I don't think they have any jurisdiction on signing off on these plans. This is the board. We have to submit our plan to them. Once it's approved by the board, we have to submit. There are things that they ask that we make sure is in there, which we have gotten those things, and Dr. Ace has made sure they were included in the plan already.
Okay, sorry, so it'll go to DOE and they'll just say, or it'll go to BOE or it'll just be filed with DOE?
I have no idea what happens when it goes to them, but I know we have to submit it. Once we're done, we have to submit it. They've been asking, have we finished and the board voted on our plan? And so I told them as soon as we vote on the plan today, we will send it to them. But we have gotten with DOE to ask them what are the things that they want in the plan. He has that, and it's within the plan.
Okay, so you feel pretty good that they'll actually sign off on it?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
We have assurances that we'll have to write responses to, but I think this is the intent of what we're trying to do with external operator.
Secondly, can you point in the contract, just to, this might be helpful for everybody, is there a place where it says specifically that the employees remain hours, like that there's, I mean, is there some sort of indication of that?
It seems like that might be by default, since we
Yeah,
don't have
it
to.
is-
Yeah,
Right,
There's nothing in the contract that would provide otherwise.
right.
So, this is a contract for services, but it does not affect the employment status of the employees at the school.
So it'd be like any other thing we're doing. Right. Okay, all right. Can you tell me what the program is? There's a reference to a program manager. And I was curious, that kind of refers to the program. And I just wanted to know what the program is. I think that's on page 11. Under the program management services, this is, project management. Project managers do the prep work for the project, quote unquote. What is the project?
Okay, so as we looked at it, kind of going down through there, the site director is a person that will literally be on site, that will work with their different leadership coaches. That person kind of works and coordinates their work within it. Each building would have a leadership coach. Academic coaches is implicit of same thing we do with our academic coaches. Data coaching is the same thing, somewhat similar to what I do with some of our coaches. The project manager is someone that resides within their company that would come down for reports from time to time, maybe once a semester or once a year, but that's on their end. They coordinate the timelines that need to be there, anything that would do with payroll with their staff, any kind of needs for any kind of requisitions or, work that would be sent our way. So that's their person who organizes their work on the backside there.
Okay, so the project in that case then is their engagement with us.
Our work,
Their
yes.
zero engagement with us. Okay. And I guess my other thing about tell me again where the 2.1 million is coming from, and what, if we were not using it for this, could we be using it for?
Right now we've identified the funding source as a general fund. Mr. Townsend, as you're aware, that you would be providing other services or things that we'd be utilizing within the district, anything from transportation on up to with employees.
Okay, so it's not a sort of specially categorized pot of money. It's just money.
Well, right now we've got identified within the project on the when you're looking at your board documents as SAI, but that is a categorical within the general fund. So for all intents and purposes, it's coming out of general funds. That's the way we say it across the board. But we've identified, Mr. Cronin, Mr. Pitts, and I, that it would be for looking at within SAI, we'd have that identified.
But it's not recurring, so I think it might be a little bit of a stretch to say personnel, right?
Yes, sir. That is the benefit to doing something like this when you're trying to ramp up improvement or projects, is that, the difference between hiring your own people and trying to expand a turnaround division, if you would, that would be reoccurring. Where this is, we're looking at it on a 2-year, year-by-year basis. Great point that it's not reoccurring past that.
Just one last thing. whatever I decide to do tonight, I want to compliment all of you guys. I know this is the least bad option. I have no dissatisfaction with what you've done here. In fact, I think it's probably something of a coup. So anyway, this is one place where I think you've done the best you can do. So I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Sullivan and Mr. Wilson?
If the money's coming out of SAI, even if the state hadn't mandated this, some of these funds would have gone to these schools anyway out of SAI for support.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And we've been doing some work with educational directions and other entities for this type of work. Again, it does save us, I think, back to the point that Mr. Wilson and I briefly said to begin with, is it's not reoccurring. You're not working with benefits packages and everything else as you expand and then need to correct.
Mr. Wilson?
So my question is for Mr. Prone. Have we included any of this in our projected fund balance yet?
Yeah, so we didn't include it on our budget packet only because we had an increase in SAI, and so we accounted for it within the SAI funds, but it's new funding, and so we have the coverage for it. So we didn't put that in as a deficit if you saw in the last budget workshop, but we do have it accounted for.
So do you anticipate it could have a negative impact on the future fund balance? Okay.
Oh, well, I can't predict the future. If they change the, parameters and that difference, more schools have to go in or whatever, and they don't fund it, then it would definitely be an impact in the future.
And I just have a comment. I'd like to echo what Mrs. Sellers and Mrs. Field said. I can't thank our superintendent enough and Dr. Akes for all the work they put into this. We have not closed a school. We know that went disastrously for another local school district. We have not turned our schools over to a third-party operator. We have not turned them over to any outside entity. I remain confident that given the opportunity that our school district could have turned these schools around, but that was not an option made available to us, and I think this is the best possible option. I know that everybody put a lot of hard work and effort into making this happen, and just can't thank you all enough for your hard work.
Yes, thank you so much.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Dr. Akes. You're welcome. Good job, thank you. Okay, the next item that's coming before you will be school safety. And the team is coming forward with Dr. Hetek, Mr. Davis, and Major Stewart.
Sleep.
How many times did you use this meeting today?
Okay, a lot.
It's the same, same backup.
Yes. It's all the same.
Is this
We took a little bit of a break.
Oh,
yeah, I had to keep the side of the table in line. Hard son. Hard son.
We're going to go ahead and get started because I know we're looking at time. So they're going to start by introducing our school safety plan. So Dr. Hetek will start off and then they'll continue moving forward from there.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Mr. Chairman has stepped out. Board members, Superintendent Byrd, and district staff. I'm Mark Hetek, the acting deputy superintendent. And today I'm joined by Rob Davis, the assistant superintendent for support services, and Major Lloyd Stewart with the Polk County Sheriff's Office. Today we're going to provide you with an overview of our district initiatives regarding the implementation of the Marjory Stoneman Douglas School Safety Act that was signed off by the governor on March 9th of this year. As you know, based on the events of February 14th in Parkland, Florida. The governor acted quickly by approving this 105-page bill 3 weeks and 2 days following the school tragedy. Today we will present to you the various responsibilities we as a school district will be mandated to perform as a result of the new legislation, and allow you to see the many obligations we have in assuring that we do everything we can to keep our students and staff safe in our schools. We will not only provide an overview of several mandates we are required to perform, but will also clearly provide our recommendations to staffing our schools with the appropriate individual who will help protect them should we face such an instance in one of our schools. Our school district has worked closely with the sheriff and his staff and feel that we are presenting a terrific option to you today for approval. This is an extensive 40-page presentation, and we may not go into depth in some cases. However, the presentation has been provided to each of you in a hard copy and should be able to answer many of your questions. At this time, I'll start by presenting the various aspects of the school safety bill for yours and the public's understanding. This Safety Act calls for the creation of the Office of Safe Schools within the Florida Department of Education to serve as the central repository for all things regarding school safety. It also requires the development of a school safety specialist training program for all school safety specialists. The statute reads that each district school superintendent shall designate a school administrator as a school safety specialist for the district. Polk County's new administrative position will be the Director, District Safety Specialist, pending your approval. The Director, District Safety Specialist must earn a certificate of completion of the School Safety Specialist training provided by the Office of Safe Schools within 1 year of his or her appointment. This position is not to be confused with our current position, the Director of Safe Schools. And as you can see, the Director of Safe Schools involves Captain Wiggins that we currently use, and those are the responsibilities that he performs now as the Director of Safe Schools. I've placed a comparison of the two positions, the new district position and the Safe Schools position, so you can see one is primarily facilitating the district initiatives, and the other will primarily conduct the law enforcement responsibilities within our schools. Physically protecting our campuses is critical. As you see right now, there currently is a $6 million need as of today, which could increase. That would allow us to meet a set standard for fully having each campus fenced, for developing a single point of entry, for securing our entryways in each of our schools, to developing a standard camera system, assuring that all of our schools have the sign-in badge system, putting student ID cards on all of our middle and high school students, and confirming that we have effective two-way radio coverage in each of our schools. Within this plan, drills are critical. As you can see, drills will be conducted for, but not limited to, fires, natural disasters, active shooter and hostage situations, and bomb threats. Drills for active shooter and hostage situations shall be conducted according to the law at least as often as other drills. Active shooter situation training will also occur for each school and must engage the participation of all of the individuals and organizations listed in the third paragraph. The law will also require that we conduct first responder tours. Each director of the district safety specialist shall coordinate with the appropriate public agencies that are designated as first responders to a school campus to conduct a tour of each campus once every 3 years. The new law has created a stiffer penalty also for anyone who makes a threat of violence against our schools. I've listed all of the means of communicating a threat of violence, and as you can see, it's now upgraded to a felony of the second degree. We will also be implementing a formal crime watch program in our schools. We have found a national model that was created by the parents of Sandy Hook Elementary, and we look to involve students in every school. We will also continue using the Crime Stoppers program that has been very successful in our schools. And we're also moving with the registration of students in our schools. The new law requires that each student at the time of an initial registration for school in the school district to note previous school expulsions, arrests resulting in a charge, juvenile justice actions, and referrals to mental health services that the student has had. The DOE Office of Safe Schools will develop an assessment tool used by each school to conduct a risk assessment, and schools will have to take actions on each finding. The new law also requires a threat assessment team, and it assures that each team shall include persons with expertise in counseling, instruction, school administration, and law enforcement. In most cases, this team already exists in our schools. However, the law formalizes some of their responsibilities. The DOE Department of Safe Schools will also implement a mobile suspicious activity reporting tool that will be called Fortify FL. So Fortify Florida will be an Android and Apple device tool for notifying suspicious activity in our schools. Through a Safe Schools assessment tool, each school will also be required to address 8 specific points of risk. And when they address the assessments in their school, those 8 points particularly revolve around school emergency and crisis preparedness, security, crime, and violence prevention policies and procedures, physical security measures, professional development training needs, the examination of support services roles in school safety, security, and emergency planning, school security and police staffing, school and community collaboration on school safety, and a return on investment analysis of the recommended physical security controls. That will be known as the FSSAT. The law also will require a multi-agency network that will be developed to support and represent the needs of students in each school district in joint planning pertaining to mental health. District school boards will also work to provide educational programs and administer children's mental health treatment and residential services. The law also states that the Department of Education shall select an authority, a national authority on mental health for the purpose of awareness and assistance training using a trainer certification model that will require all school personnel in elementary, middle, and high schools to obtain the training. The director, district safety specialist, shall be the one to ensure that all personnel receive the mental health and awareness training across the district. The mental health allocation for us in Polk County is to support the programs. It's $2.41 million, and our Supportive Services Division will come to you in the future with a specific plan. You can see based on the bullets that the plans must be completed by August 1st of each year. So we will be working with all of our schools and Student Services Division to push that forward quickly. The law also requires that the school district is to report to the state 5 relevant data pieces each year from the mental health plan. Those 5 relevant data pieces that must be reported include the students who receive screenings or assessments in mental health, the students who are referred for services or assistance in mental health, students who receive those services or assistance, a direct employment service providers employed by each district, and information regarding any contract-based collaborative efforts or partnerships with the community mental health programs, agencies, or providers that partner with the school district. As you can see, the state has also allocated Polk schools $3.3 million in new Safe Schools money for the purpose of placing an armed individual in each of our schools for that protection. At this time, Rob Davis will present the information regarding the Safe School officers.
Okay, the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Act is essentially there to protect protection and safety of our students, our staff, our visitors on campus, and the property, our school property. The school board and the school superintendent shall partner with a local law enforcement agency to establish or assign one or more school safety or safe schools officers. Each school facility, by a combination of one of those options, will be developed and which will meet the district's needs. The next slide basically identifies the safe school officer, 3 options identified in the new mandate. The first option is school resource officer program through a cooperative agreement with law enforcement agency. We currently do that with our local agencies in our current county and the sheriff's department. Option 2 is a safe schools officer employed by a local law enforcement agency or the school district, and they must be a certified law enforcement officer. And option 3 is the school guardian program, also known as the Aaron Weiss Guardian Program. What we did is looked at the options and did pros and cons. The pros and cons of option 1 is simply we would have certified law enforcement officers on all campuses if we were able to extend that program. The pro would also would have police vehicles parked on campuses during the school hours. The cons, unfortunately, is that the sheriff's department and local law enforcement agencies do not have the staff to cover those positions that the district currently needs. And the cost exceeds the projected funding from the state significantly. Just a breakdown of option 1, if the sheriff's department or other law enforcement agencies were able to come up with the expansion of the SRO program or SRD program, the estimated cost for startup in the first year would be $15.7 million. And then the reoccurring cost for annual cost would be $12.5. That would include supervisory staff, deputies, equipment in the first year for startup cost, and then the second year, of course, supervisory staff and deputies for the estimated annual cost. Option 2, school safety officer program, employed by either a law enforcement agency or school district. The pros would be a certified law enforcement officer at all schools. Again, police vehicles parked on campuses during school hours at all school locations. The cons is the cost is significantly higher than what the anticipated funds from the new allocation of the safe schools. The law enforcement agencies do not have the certified law enforcement officers or adequate supervision staff to meet the needs of the school district. And the school district would have to hire certified law enforcement officers identified as school safety officers and must comply with the provisions of Chapter 943 and the Florida statutes, ultimately establishing its own police agency. Based on that information, we looked at the hiring of school safety officers, being certified officers, and really came out to see that option 2 was not a viable option for the school district. So we didn't cost that out based on that fact. The option 3, school guardian program. The pros is school safety guardians would be a new position that is uniformed and armed. These school safety guardians are district positions that will be assigned to all elementary schools and some other specialized schools. This is, again, a new district position that will be hired to meet the statutory language and will not include current school employees. The school safety, I'm sorry.
Just FYI, I mean, just for language purposes, that's not what the Guardian program is. I get what you're saying.
No, it's not, right.
So,
Right.
you're gonna freak some people out when you
Right.
say we're doing, so just be aware of
I
that.
wish we called it something else.
Well, I think you need to, once they go through the full program, full PowerPoint presentation, then you'll see where it's the combination that night comes in.
And the other pro was it was the least expensive to implement and maintain. The cons, of course, is trying to hire 90 new employees, and not all schools would have certified law enforcement officers assigned. The next slide, option 3, school guardian program cost. The estimated cost for the first year would be $3.72 million. The reoccurring cost would be $3.69 million, and the estimated new state allocations through the Safe School Fund would be about $3.3 million. That would include 90 guardians at $40K per year, $3.6 million, and it breaks down the salary grade, the benefits, and then we go into the director, as Dr. Hutek has already mentioned. It'd be a 12-month, 8-hour administrative salary position, and roughly come out to, for the first year, $125,000 in between that area.
Let me just add that 119 is off. If you just do the direct 95 plus the 30,000, it's off by the $5,000. But we rounded up for the sake of the upper number, the 3.3 million at the top, just to round it. But that would involve the expenses of the director, including a car, uniform, and equipment.
Oh, so that's just the car for the director?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, the superintendent's recommendation, based on significant research of each option and the in-depth discussions with the Polk County Sheriff's Office, the superintendent recommends a combination of the options to meet the needs of the district. The combination of the identified options outlined in the Marjory Stone Douglas High School Public Safety Act and the flexibility to combine options stated within that act will accomplish and require the following. It will assure all middle school and high schools will have SROs and SRDs through our current traditional program with the Polk County Sheriff's Office and other law enforcement agencies throughout our county. It also assures that all elementary schools will be assigned a Safe Schools Officer as required by statute, which is a new uniformed and armed position called the School Safety Guardian, pending approval. Prevents the need to add additional responsibilities to any current position within our schools. Requires advertising the hiring of 90 school safety guardians and 1 director, and requires establishing a interlocal agreement with the Sheriff's Department for the training of 90 school safety guardians and 1 director through the Coach Aaron Vice Guardian Program, which is in progress. And the reason I've spelled out the Coach Aaron Vice Guardian Program is because he was the coach that put himself in harm's way to help shelter other students.
No, I get it. I get it. This is a language thing. I do have a question, but we'll come back to it.
The Safe School Guardians are appointed to aid in prevention or abatement of the active assailant incidents on school premises. A school guardian has no authority to act in any law enforcement capacity except to the extent necessary to prevent or abate the active assailant incident on a school premises, which, God forbid, we ever have. And with that, we'll turn it over to Major Lloyd Stewart with the Polk County Sheriff's Office.
Good afternoon.
So,
First of all, you talk a little bit about the selection of the school safety guardians. And as you know, they'll be employees of the district, so anybody who wants to apply for that position has to apply at the district, at the HR at the district. And once the district has done the evaluation of whether they meet the needs for an employee at the district, then they will send them to the sheriff's office to fill out an application for the guardian application. Something to keep in mind is that the district obviously does background and drug tests, which we also have to do for the guardian program, but it gives us a leg up knowing that these people probably will have a good chance of being in the guardian program. On top of that, we do a psychological evaluation to evaluate their fitness for this position. The statute also provides some money for the training and selection of guardians. However, the Department of Education has not given guidance on how that's going to be allocated yet. After the people have passed the requirements for the selection process, then of course we have to begin training. We do firearms training, which includes 80 hours of basic academy firearms training, and that's almost the same training that a basic law enforcement recruit, it's the same number of hours, has to go through. And they also have to do 16 hours of precision pistol. A recruit who's going through the basic law enforcement academy does not have to do the precision pistol course because it's an advanced course that in fact many law enforcement officers do not go through for the entirety of their career. They also do 8 hours of discretionary shooting, which is, or a law enforcement officer in the academy has 4 hours, and 8 hours of active shooter training, which a law enforcement academy recruit gets 6 hours. As you can see, they do significantly more firearms training than a basic law enforcement officer who has just completed the academy. It's approximately 25% increase in firearm training. They're also required to qualify at 85% versus 80% for that FDLE mandates for law enforcement officers. And a law enforcement officer who had just graduated from the basic academy and had been hired as a law enforcement officer would be expected to go into an active shooter situation on day one if that happened. Beyond the firearms training, of course, they have to take 8 hours of defensive tactics, and that's focused on the skills that will be germane to their guardian duties, which include weapon retention and defeating a sudden attack. They also have to take 12 hours of legal issues, both to focus on their limitations and the obligations that they have in that position. And they have to take 12 hours of diversity training. The sheriff wanted me to convey just a few thoughts today. First, he wanted to be here today, but unfortunately today is the first meeting for the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Commission, so he had to be out of county because of that meeting. So you got me instead, sorry. We have established a great partnership already, and this partnership position only serves to improve what we have already done together to enhance security. Let me remind you of some examples of the layers of security we've already accomplished together to make our schools safer. We've conducted active shooter training, holding full-scale multi-agency exercises. We rewrote the critical incident response plan. We implemented emergency radio, direct contact between all of our schools and the Sheriff's Office Communications Center. We've done principal roundtables. We've done extensive staff training for all sorts of critical incidents, including bomb threats, active shooter, and other incidents like that. Active shooter training video for all middle and high school students, an online training video for school volunteers, updated the lockdown drill policy, campus visitor control checks, partnered with Safe Schools, the district student services, and Peace River to evaluate potential threats from students. We've also standardized safety bulletins and had a See Something, Say Something campaign. Domestic violence and gang training for district employees, and developed gang resistance intervention program, most of you know as the GRIP program, which they also respond to a lot of our emergencies that we have on campuses. We've also conducted site safety evaluations for schools across the county and provided recommendations for target hardening. So these are just a few of the systems we've developed together, but we're not going to rest there. We're committed to working with you to continue to improve. So that brings us back to today. The authority of these guardians to take any law enforcement action is extremely limited. Throughout their training, they're reminded that they have no authority to take any law enforcement action other than to stop the threat of an active assailant. That's a person who's engaged in killing other people or attempting to kill other people on our school campuses. They cannot take law enforcement action for burglaries, for school fights, for marijuana possession, or any other action that would lend the color of law. They can only act in an active assailant situation. Any other duties they have are assigned by the district and only the district. But that's the brilliant thing about this program, is there are a lot of other requirements for the district that these guardians can take on that are enumerated in the new law. The sheriff believes the school safety guardians are a great program and a good first step for the last layer of protection. When seconds count, minutes don't matter. So in the end, he would like to see us have at least 2 to 3 school guardians on each campus as backup to our SROs and SRDs and existing school guardians. They give us the advantage of surprise with a force multiplier and reduce the response time. The school safety guardian will be a model for other school districts. Together, we have a monumental task ahead of us to do in a very short time. We appreciate the sense of urgency to see this completed and assure you we will do our part to make the school guardians a success. In fact, many of our partner agencies across the county have already committed training personnel to see this program completed. So to all those people interested in applying for this new position, should the board vote to pass the position, you need to apply tomorrow. We also ask the media to get that message out for us. We have a lot to do in a short time. Thank you.
But don't send that message until we vote.
That's this evening. Okay. So to wrap up, we've got 2 new positions that will come before you to vote on. In response to the required efforts, and as you saw, there was a multitude of new assignments and responsibilities that are going to occur at the district level and within the schools, and also to comply with the order to have an armed individual in the school. And in order to meet the statutory requirements for the school safety plan, we present to you 2 new job descriptions. The first is the Director, District Safety Specialist, and the second is the School Safety Guardian. Also, I just wanted to touch from a financial aspect, because I know that always comes up. If you go back to the slide that lists option 3, the Guardian program costs, you'll see that the estimated startup cost is $3.72 million for the first year. And that involves the initial costs that are above and beyond for the director. But other than that, the average annual cost should be around $3.69 million, and the allocation from the Safe Schools this year is $3.3 million. So we're talking about a $400,000 difference in implementing this program, as opposed to a $12 million deficit that we have if we went into another direction. So that concludes the presentation. I want to thank the Sheriff's Office and Rob Davis, and we will gladly take questions.
Okay. And I know that before they got some questions going out, with the school guardians, what we, looking at the 3 options, I would love to have had option 1, but quite naturally we see that financially that was something we could not do. So with the law centers, you can have a combination of things, and looking at what the guardian program was in its original intent was for school staff without it being a classroom teacher. So when you're doing a combination, we looked at just modifying, and we worked with the sheriff's office on that by creating a district position and calling that our guardian at that point. So we've modified that and worked with the sheriff's office with that idea.
so that now you have teachers teaching and staff in classrooms so that they can focus on that. But this person, as you saw with Dr. Hughes, when he laid out all the legal stuff that was in the bill, there's a lot of work that guardian on campus has to do, as you heard. So that person is going to be designated just for that. So that's just a little difference that you heard today. That's why I was telling Mr. Townsend, you'll hear a little difference in that. But we kind of made sure that we did not have school staff. We had a district employee that's going to be serving as that guardian through the program. So now take questions. Ms. Cunningham.
Just a couple things. I noticed on here on the option 3, I don't know what page it is, but it says it does not include the current SRO program that's in our middle and high schools. So my question is, I know there are still some middle schools as well as elementary that don't have that individual on site. So with the dollars that we've placed here on the startup cost, does that include, if we go with this program, will I be assured that every one of my schools will either have an SRO, which currently exists, or a new school safety guardian at every one of our schools?
Yes, ma'am, you will be assured of that.
That's the intent of this.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
it will cover the bridge, because I was looking at Sheriff Judd's comments at the board meeting that night, and the numbers are a little different, but I get we've tweaked that.
Can I
Now.
add, is that the
Yes.
3.3? That's the new money. What they
Right.
figured there's the new money.
Right.
So currently, we're spending 2.6. That's so
For the
that
current one.
3.3, what you're looking at right there's that's an
Addition.
addition to what we have
Okay.
currently. Yes.
Okay, and then just to reiterate, because I know it's out there in social media and everywhere, everybody's concern, and you know, as I went to my schools, I think I mentioned this last time, the concern from administrators down to bus drivers was not to have school personnel be one of these. So we are assuring our community at large that these individuals who will be hired are folks that are being hired specifically to do this job on our campuses and this job only. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am,
Okay,
and they
that's
will be
correct.
hired as a district position under
Right.
the district director and assigned to schools.
Okay.
They will not be the staff of the schools.
Not be the staff of the schools.
Yes, ma'am.
And then my third question is timing. Do I understand that these individuals all have to be trained and in place by, is it August 1 or the first day of school?
First day of school.
For their school.
Okay, and do we feel in cooperation with our sheriff's department and our other local enforcement? I understand the other, you know, local enforcement agencies, our cities are coming also on board, but do we feel like we can meet that or close to
We
it?
can get them trained, we have to get them hired.
Yes, sir.
And so we do have a huge task ahead of us to make sure that we get those people processed and through the hiring portion of the stage so that they're qualified to get that position.
I see.
But we will put the resources necessary to it to give them the training.
Which
Thank
is why Major Stewart did his public service announcement.
Yes,
Correct.
yes.
And to piggyback on Major Stewart's, we've had quite a bit of interest in the position, and so
Yeah.
after I think Mrs. Byrd and Sheriff Judd did the press conference, we really had quite a bit of interest, and so I think everyone's really chomping at the bit to see if they can apply for the positions.
Okay.
Mr. Harrison, Ms. Reynolds.
And speaking in that same vein in terms of hiring personnel, will it speed up the process if current employees that are already working for the school district in another capacity apply for those jobs?
I'm sorry, what was the first part of that question?
Will it speed up the hiring process if our current employees who meet these eligibility requirements, high school diploma, et cetera, if they wish to apply for the jobs, will that speed up the hiring process for you?
Yes, certainly it will. They will still have to complete an employment application or a guardian application with the sheriff's office. We will likely retest them for drugs and or the fingerprinting just to make sure from when they applied originally to now that they don't have anything in their background that would preclude them from being a guardian.
Thank you.
Ms. Reynolds.
In that vein, if this gets approved tonight, is it ready to be posted on the website
Our finger
at
is waiting
7
to
p.m. as soon
Waiting
as we
to
vote
go.
on it? Okay,
Ready.
that's
Right when you all
awesome.
approve it, we
So-
are waiting for that approval, so then it will
Okay.
go live
Awesome.
tomorrow, I think at midnight, actually.
Oh.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Mr. Wilson.
So just to be clear, if they're currently employed and they apply for this job, they'll have to they won't be able to have two positions, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
So this would be a new position. Okay.
This would be a new position, yes.
And the continuing cost of 3.6 million roughly,
Yes, sir.
we don't have any indication that the state is going to be funding that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So that's a cost we'll have to find somewhere moving forward.
Unless
So
they-
I'm sorry.
Unless they,
Unless they fund it in the future. I think, and I want to make it clear, that there could be some confusion with the verbiage, and
yes.
this is a modified Guardian program. This is not the Guardian program as suggested by the state of Florida, so that we will not be placing firearms in the hands of teachers and folks who have other jobs currently with
Of school employees.
Of school employees, correct. I think it's a great idea for this reason. I think our SROs do a wonderful job, but they have a lot of other responsibilities. This person, we focused exclusively on observation and prevention, and I think that's a huge, something that I don't think we really have done in the past. I think it's going to be very important for our school district. And again, let me say this. Our superintendent and our staff have come up with a plan that works for our community and our county. And I can't, again, thank them enough for their hard work. And the sheriff has worked with us to make this a possibility. So just great team effort and collaboration and partnership on everybody's part. Thank you so much.
The school guardian program, it had 3.72 million, because I'm assuming that's training, but is it not, it's not training, oh, it's just the uniform, oh.
The school guardian program fees will be covered by the sheriff for the training of the school guardians. These are employment fees as a school safety guardian specialist, school district position.
But the state may reimburse, because they talked about some training money for the guardian program. They just haven't really let us know how much that is. That?
Do you know what the amount?
Well, there's 67 million total allocated, but we don't know how it's allocated to us yet. And we don't know what all the specifics are that it will cover at that point, because it's selection and training of those individuals.
But that would probably go to the sheriff's department to help defray
That's
the
correct.
training.
That goes to the sheriff's department.
And the only other comment, I think the school board should write our sheriff a letter of thank you, because he really has worked hard with our district to come up with a plan that would work for Polk County. And I think when we have outside people working this hard to help us, we should always thank them, because we're quick to criticize, but sometimes we're slow to thank the people that really do partner with us and help us.
Mr. Townsend, then Ms. Fields. Okay, Ms. Fields, then Ms. Townsend.
Well, when we first had this conversation, I was totally against the Sentinel program and the idea of having teachers with weapons intertwined with their regular duties, or any of the employees. So I'm happy that you all have gone back, and I want to commend Ms. Jackie for going back and looking at it in a different way and talking to other school districts to see what they're doing. And I would imagine this would be a model for other school districts to utilize. So I can't thank you and you guys enough. We can't thank you all enough, because at the end of the day, it's about keeping our kids safe and our employees safe. I do have a question about the assignments. For the K through 8th grade schools, are they going to have the guardian or SRO, or will it be dependent on the size of the school, like Lakeland and Highland School? And if you can't answer it now, that's fine.
What do they have now assigned to them?
Lakeland Highlands already has an SRO.
SRO, that's what I thought it is,
So
What does Rochelle have? I should know that.
It has a
SRO.
an SRO.
Okay, so basically the K through 8 will have the SROs and elementary will have the guardian.
Yes.
Yes.
And then something I read about specialized schools, I would imagine that's our alternative schools.
Like Gauls Academy,
Okay.
Gauls, such like that.
Our ESC centers.
And then the other question that I have is the threat assessment training for staff. Is there training threat assessment training for staff so they'll know how to do the documents that comes with the responsibilities?
That hasn't been developed yet by
I
the
think
state.
it needs to be, somebody needs to do it.
Well, we
so that everybody
do
knows
have
what
threat
they're doing.
assessments in schools when it deals with children currently, and there is a threat assessment team at every school currently.
And they're trained to do the two?
The threat assessment's based on the child's needs and the threats that the children pose, yes ma'am,
Okay.
currently.
Well, I think we need to go back and make sure that that is understood by all of the schools, because I don't think that some schools are understanding that,
And
for
this
whatever
bill-
it's worth.
Just a real quick recap, on May 1st of 2018, the Florida Department of Education has to have the director of
Which is gonna
Office of
outline
Safe
that.
Schools in place, so then we'll start receiving that information.
They're gonna outline the trainings, and that's when we have our director. That information will go to that director, but not only will it just be the schools that we're putting the guardians in after that, we have to have those schools, every last one of them, so that person is gonna oversee all of that and make sure and work with Office of Safe Schools.
And after Virginia Tech, the Secret Service, in cooperation with a lot of other entities, developed a threat assessment model that we actually use at the school board through Student Services. So we cooperate with Student Services, Safe Schools, and Peace River to do those threat assessments when we have something that comes through with a student.
Mr. Townsend?
Few things. On the middle schools, to my understanding, we share SROs at a few middle schools. Is that like one of them specifically is like Alfred Poly? Are they going to have a full-time SRO, or are they going to continue to share?
Yes, sir. In some cases, we have like a middle school might share with one or two elementaries. We will provide, every middle and high school will have their own SRO, and every elementary school will have a safety guardian.
So in the case, just for example, in the case of like Alfred Poly, are they sharing an SRO with elementary schools, and then that just
Currently?
gets assigned? Yeah.
Currently, yes, they are.
Currently,
They have-
Okay,
they got
so
elementary
most
as
schools will be
well.
pulling that SRO out of
Exactly.
the elementary schools to give it.
Exactly.
Okay, so every middle school will have an SRO.
SRO.
Okay. Secondly, I love this because, like just like you guys did with the thing we just talked about, you've created an option that wasn't contemplated by the law, which I just kind of enjoy as a thing. Does that mean we can double dip? I mean, there's a pot of money for the Guardian program here. There's a pot of money for the law enforcement officers here. Can we snatch from both? I don't. Or not tell anybody. I think that is a bit of a joke.
Well, in a sense, we are taking from both, because they're gonna handle all the training, they're gonna handle all the equipment, the uniforms, everything. We're gonna handle the employment.
It's very clever.
Yeah,
We did a good clever thing here.
I think that's the value of referring to it as the guardian.
And the guardian program.
I know. Again, I'm good with it. I just want to send them all to me. When people freak out with the guardian name, just send them to me. I'll explain. I also want to say I like the very limited arrest authority. Thank you for that. That was something that was concerning to me. I didn't know what the specific authority was. I do have a question about the mental health issue, and this may, I mean, it's probably going to be, this is a state thing. What happens if they don't? If you know, every kid who comes registers a school now has to tell that school they've been to a psychiatrist, I guess, if that's, what happens if they don't? Is that grounds for suspension, expulsion? Is that a felony? Does anybody know the answer to that question?
I don't believe that information yet. That's gonna become a school function, an administrative function within a school, and I don't think that there's been any thing that has come down legally yet to what that means to a parent that falsifies that.
Or just doesn't acknowledge it.
Yeah, and I can tell you, probably once the DOE gets that person in place, we may have some more clarity. We start changing our forms, but once, I mean, we can ask those questions once they get that person in place. At the time, you know, I don't know either what's the consequence for it.
I just didn't know if there'd been any. And the last thing, to dovetail on what Hazel said, I'm fine. I think it's great to send a letter to the sheriff. I think we also should include Lakeland PD and Haines City PD and Winter Haven PD. It's my understanding they've played very constructive roles in getting to this place too. So just want to make sure we're, all of our law enforcement partners are added.
And did y'all want to sign that letter as well, much like we did the one to the center?
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
So I think I'm good. Thanks.
Any other questions? Ms.
Just a
Cunningham?
comment, just want to say thank you. I want to echo the same thing as my colleagues. This is wonderful, as I have talked to constituents who are extremely concerned about arming personnel in schools. I've used the word, because I didn't know the technical, I've used hybrid guardian program is kind of how I try to explain it. It's kind of the best of both worlds. So thank you for being creative and out of the box with this, but yet serving the purpose, and why we sit here today is to protect and educate our children. So thank you. It's wonderful.
Okay. Okay. That concludes. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Is there transitioning? Because they took care of the job description as well. The last, as a transition, I know I have Pam and Richard coming forward. I guess I'll let them.
You don't want to wait?
So you're going to get the rest of our stories?
Oh, no.
Man.
Oh, no.
It's just getting good.
I know. We're just getting warmed up. That's right.
Yeah.
Amen. Y'all need to stay.
Major Stewart.
The last item you have right now before you is our sales tax information that Pam is going to share. There was some information asked of, I believe, Angela earlier, and she's prepared some information, but you'll be seeing more come before you. Also, there's a video. I'm not sure if you've all seen the video that's going to be going out. So we want to make sure that you are aware of the video that's out there as well as the information. So this was really not a discussion item more, so it was more some information as we start trying to layer this during the meetings. So Pam and Richard.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, and it's good to be here with you. And just want to say that Polk County School District has a lot that we can say we're blessed, because in 2003, the voters decided to support us with the half-penny sales tax. And as that comes to the sunset, we want to say a very big thank you to the community and to the voters in Polk County. And there have been so many ways that we have been blessed through this. And as Ms. Bird said, there is a website. I know you've probably seen the signs around the cities lately. And there have been a lot of hits on the website, so we're glad that we're getting that message out to thank the residents of Polk County. So we'd like for you to take a look at the video that is also embedded in the website. And thank you, Mr. Wilson, for being a big part of that.
I think next time we need to get a professional. Hi, I'm Lynn Wilson, Chair for the Polk County School Board. You know, education provides benefit to our community and to our society in so many ways. We know that a better educated community ensures that we have a higher quality lifestyle within our community. That means that you have access to the goods and services that you want and need within your community. We know that a better educated community ensures lower crime rates, so that we all have an opportunity to play and live and work in a safer community. Since 2003, thanks to you, we've built 9 new schools to better serve our students. We've added 43 additions to existing schools to better serve our students. There have been numerous renovations throughout the district and throughout your community to ensure that our students, your students, have access to a quality education in a safe, clean, and secure environment. We've upgraded our infrastructure to ensure that our students have access to the latest technology so that they're best prepared to enter the workforce.
Hello, I'm Ashley Troutman, Polk County business owner and current chairman of the school board's half-cent sales tax oversight committee. And I want to thank you, our Polk County voters and citizens, for your support of our school system, its teachers, students, and parents that we serve on an annual basis. Our half-cent sales tax committee is made up by volunteers who are appointed by our local school district board members. Over the past 15 years, these civic and business leaders have met on a quarterly basis to review the needs that our school system has for new construction and also improvements to our current facilities. Because of your support of this sales tax, we have had the needed capital that we've needed for quite some time to make the improvements to our facilities that we need. And each and every day our school system is improving because our kids and teachers are going to classes more confident because of the improved facilities they have an opportunity to learn in. Polk County is currently the 7th largest school district in the state of Florida, but also the 4th least funded school district. So these dollars have come at a very critical time, and we have more and more improvements to go. As our community continues to be an attractive place to live, work, and play, it's attracting more and more people that decide to call Polk County its home. And our need for our sales tax dollars will not go away anytime soon.
My name is Tom Deerdorf. I'm the Assistant County Manager for Planning and Development, and schools are an important part of our community infrastructure as we plan for the future and as we try to accommodate new growth within Polk County. Since the sales tax was enacted in the year 2003, Polk County has grown by about 150,000 permanent residents. And the challenge associated with that growth is that that growth has often been in East and Northeast Polk County, where we sometimes have a lack of community facilities or infrastructure like roads or schools. The sales tax has helped us to plan new schools to accommodate that growth that's occurred. And in the future, we expect that Polk County will continue to grow at a rapid pace. By the year 2040, we're expecting almost 1 million residents in Polk, and about half of that new residential growth is going to be in Northeast Polk. So again, the sales tax and the sales tax revenue will help us to plan for that future growth.
Hello, I'm Clay Bennett, news anchor for the Auburndale High School Daily News Show, HDTV. I'm currently walking through the 700s building, one of many additions to the Auburndale High School campus from back in 2011. That's all thanks to the half-cent sales tax initiative. Now let's go hear from our leader, Mr. John Hill.
Hello, my name is John Hill, and it is my privilege and honor to be the principal of Auburndale High School. Thanks to the half-cent sales tax, Auburndale High School now has the facilities and the infrastructure necessary to provide our students a world-class education. We are very thankful that our facilities and that our infrastructure gives us the very best opportunity to accomplish our vision and our mission for the community of Auburndale, for the students and families of Auburndale, and for Auburndale High School.
To learn more about how your tax dollars are serving your community, please visit www.polkpromise.net, and that's Polk Promise, all one word, www.polkpromise.net. On behalf of the Polk County School Board and the Polk County School District, I'd like to offer a heartfelt thank you to all of the citizens who turned out in 2003 to ensure that our children, our students, your children, your students have access to a quality education in a safe, clean, and secure learning environment. Thank you so very much.
And I think Clay Bennett probably should have done all of that.
Ms. Usher did ask that we also express a great thank you to Chris Oxford, the CCTV teacher at Auburndale Senior, and his students, and to Mr. Hill for all the work that they put in putting this video together.
Yeah, they did a great job.
And Pam, did you have any comments? The sales tax on the sales tax revenue comparison that we have before us.
Well, are there any questions that you want to? I think Richard was kind of prepared to address that if there were questions. It's just the first line is what was collected during the 16-17 fiscal year, and the second line is a comparison of what's been collected this year. And you can see that most months we are continuing to exceed from the previous year the collections, which is very, very good news. And that overall we've collected close to $500 million up to this point. I'm sure we've exceeded that too at this point, because we are behind here on the collections. We only get like a quarterly report on those. So are there any questions at all on the financial sheet?
just some, make sure I'm reading this right, the current amount of money we have on hand is roughly 17 million, is that?
That was in March, at the March meeting. This is from the Sales Tax Oversight Committee meeting. So I'm sure that there's, this is a very fluid document. I'm sure there's less than that. There have been more projects that have been implemented since then, but that's close.
But the debt service is roughly $25 to $26 million a year.
Correct.
And that's going to go away, right?
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions?
I don't have any questions, but I have a comment to make. I'm currently the liaison for the Sales Tax Oversight Committee, and the members are very anxious, and they are excited about the opportunity to go out to the community so that we can renew the sales tax referendum. I think that it's going to be very important for us to make sure that we are bringing this before the board on a regular basis until we get to the place where we want to have this passed. I know we can only do certain things, Mr. Bridges. I know there are certain things we can and cannot do, but I think it's going to be very important for the board to be abreast and be aware of where we are as we venture through this again. That's just my take on it.
Yes, ma'am, and I went ahead, I provided a copy of a memo that I did for you last summer with some of the rules of engagement for this. Bottom line is you have to be very careful about spending tax dollars to get tax dollars. You can't expend funds for political advertising, public funds for political advertising. But the First Amendment protects your right as individual board members to go out and advocate, and there's no issue whatsoever with any communications that are factual and are not advocating for the passage of a referendum. That's fine, but you have to be very careful, make sure you don't expend public funds for political advertisements advocating the passage of a referendum.
I guess my other question to you, Mr. Bridges, I don't remember. Have you gone before the Sales Tax Oversight Committee to tell them what they can and cannot do?
It has probably been, it was last year is the last time that I've been invited to attend the Sales Tax Oversight Committee. I'd be happy to at any time.
I just want to say thank you for the video and the website, because we were at the Winter Haven Pep Rally last week, and I had a gentleman from our community come up and basically say, he's like, every dollar that you guys have spent, these tax dollars, is documented, and I don't know where any of my other tax dollars go, but that half-cent sales tax, I can tell you where every penny went, which I thought was really cool and a huge compliment to you guys. So thank you for putting it together and getting the message out there of what we spend that money on, because our community does notice. It's exciting.
That's why we're on the Sales Tax Oversight Committee.
And I have a report as relates to that. Should I give that now, or would you like me to wait until my comments?
I want to close out for that section. Any other questions for Pam and Richard? Okay, Chair, that concludes my portion. I will turn it over to you.
So the next item on the agenda is review of the agenda. Let me pull it up here real quickly. So we have some special recognitions, and we have a proclamation. And I think it's the superintendent's recommendation, and I concur that moving forward with proclamations, that we, while we read them, that we not vote on them or sign them or put the names, the school board names on them. That's consistent with what we see happening with the Board of County Commissioners. So is that okay with everyone else moving forward?
What's the point of it?
Well, the concern is that...
Let me understand, yeah.
Yeah, the point I think, more than anything else, is that we are seeing requests for things that may be only peripherally related to education, and the concern that they could be a distraction to the school district, and whether you agree to do them or not, it tends to be a distraction. So we've talked about it for the past year or so, on and on.
So the difference is you just read the proclamation and say what at the end?
That's it.
Thank you
just
so
read it.
much.
You're done. Thank you. This proclamation is read into the minutes.
Okay.
Is there a screening process? I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Is there?
Yes, there is a screening process. I mean, certainly things that are clearly and unequivocally not related to education, we would not bring forward. But I mean, and the board certainly is welcome to propose some sort of review of that if you'd like.
Yeah. So.
It's okay. Just
Would we be you and Jackie? Is that at this point?
Well, we'll do whatever you want to do. I would assume, and you know, it would, absent something that was, we're not looking to screen anything.
Okay.
Absent something that's just absolutely
right.
over the top back.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
my hand is up.
Yes, ma'am. I apologize.
It's okay. My understanding is that proclamations literally usually go through community relations, correct? If I'm wrong, Ms. Jackie.
Right, it used to go somewhere.
Right, and I don't know that that needs to change. I do know that we talked about what you're proposing, maybe a year ago? And that we were gonna have some discussion on it. So, I mean, today is the discussion day, I guess. And I'm okay with it. But I know that we've had this discussion before, and we wanted to mirror what the county commissioner's been doing, and that's what's being proposed.
That is what's being proposed, yes, ma'am.
That's correct.
So we have 3 sets of minutes. Any amendments, corrections to the minutes?
I have a question on the proclamation. Who's doing the proclamation today?
me.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any questions about anything on special recognitions? Comments? We have 3 sets of minutes. Any questions, comments about the minutes? All right. On the consent agenda, items C12 through C17. Questions, comments? C18 through C23. We have a number of donations as usual, and again, we're so very grateful for our community to come forth and making those donations. Any questions about any of the donations through C51? Facilities, C52 through C58. Questions, comments? Under that. C59 through C62. Okay. Human resource recommendations, C63 through C66. Questions, comments? Closing out the consent agenda, C67 through C70. Yes, ma'am.
My question is to Mr. Davis on the school bus purchase for the 50 new school buses. Where are we on our cycle? I mean, I know we're way off, but what will this, help me?
We're still around 15-year replacement cycle, but by purchasing 50, that will keep us level. So we're fortunate enough to purchase that many.
Yes, at one time, right. Okay.
It is around 15 years before we retire.
15 years before we retire now, instead of 10. Okay, sir, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Townsend?
Can I come back to one?
Sure.
The contract with LSI for Kathleen High. Part of the.
Which item is that?
It's C22.
C22. Right.
That's part of the big grant for Kathleen High. That's the academic part, like not the mental health part, I assume. So we're just contracted with them to provide.
Right, that's part of their hopes.
That's part of the
school
school
health.
No, I understand that, but like specifically, it's.
It would be to ramp up the instructional practices at the school.
Okay, it's
our goal is to like a demonstration school for rigor through this process.
Okay, it's primarily a PD as opposed to direct support service, like, I mean direct.
Yes, sir, it is PD support, for the staff and for the principal.
How were they selected? Did we do an RFP, or how did that come about?
They had to be eligible through their status within the comprehensive school improvement, where they were with the top plans. We were, as you remember, we were denied the first round. Then Dr. Long and her staff and Ms. Barnes resubmitted the second round, and we were able to be selected to that. So this will be one portion of it that we will bring to you, the professional development and working with school staff. The other part will be working through University of South Florida that will be coming to you next month.
Did we get to pick LSI, or was that sort of part of the condition of the grant?
We did work directly with LSI as we worked through the process, because we're already such a partner with them. We didn't want it to be confusing or in competition or with any of the other initiatives we have going on. So literally this work for Kathleen would be directly in line with our leadership work that we're doing throughout the district, but it'll actually accelerate them in this process about 2 or 3 years forward.
I could add just one thing. As part of the grant application process, we included the LSI and these initiatives in the grant application.
Okay, I guess that was
but I think that's where you were
that was
yeah.
my question.
So
they were a condition of the grant.
Yes.
Yes, and when I presented about the grant, I shared LSI because it was a component in our application and is already in that budget in the project.
Right, it's research-based strategies that's been proven to work.
Okay. Any questions or comments? So is there any item on the consent agenda that anyone would like to move to the regular agenda? I won't ask that question at the board meeting this evening. It doesn't preclude anyone from asking something moved. I just think it makes it easier on staff to move it. Okay. Regular items, item R71 through R75. Questions, comments? And then item R77, I have a question about that, Mr. Bridges. Are you going to frame the motion for us?
I'd be happy to.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it's just
it's just an announcement.
Yeah,
okay.
And you can do it. Move approval is
right.
Request authority to advertise, so move approval is sufficient.
But it does require a vote.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a ministerial thing, but it is something that is best practice.
Okay. And that concludes the agenda review, and as I understand it, we have now a closed session.
Yes, sir. Let me check and see, make sure we have our court reporter present. What we'll need to do, ladies and gentlemen, Florida law provides for the board to meet with counsel to discuss litigation strategy. That's what this is. It's been previously noticed. There'll be a court reporter present, and the entire matter will be transcribed and become public record at the close of litigation. But we'll try to move through this as quickly as possible. I would anticipate perhaps 20 minutes, and we'll go back on the record at the end of that time. And I would request that our recording equipment go dead immediately, and we'll get our court report.
Board members, we do have two.
The last item on the agenda are school board members' comments. So if there are any comments?
I brought this up at the last board meeting and I still haven't seen anything on it, but the last day of school, whether or not it's going to be a half day, schools...
I thought I saw something come down.
Okay.
Let me go.
It
is a half day. And
okay.
I'll double check, but it should
buses run?
Oh yeah, it's
Okay.
going to be our normal last day
It
schedule.
normally gets changed. My concern, it doesn't normally get announced until April, so, but I haven't, I could have just missed it, but.
I saw it, so I know.
That hasn't been normal.
No, it hasn't, no.
Has not
At
been
least
normal.
the past
We've notified the regionals
since-
to notify the principals, but we haven't put it out publicly.
Right.
In the event that we had to cancel that day or take it for instructional reasons.
Something else.
But it is about that time that we'll prepare a statement to put it out to the schools.
And they have to get that with the union. So Marianne said one thing, but we have to make sure.
Okay,
Mhm.
got it.
So, but it's been, to answer your question, I know since I've been here.
It's been at
Because
least
that
3 or
hasn't
4
been the norm
years.
at all for this country.
Yeah, since I.
It was when I was in high school, they did it too. I mean, it's.
You might have had a one-time school event, but it was not a district-wide norm for us.
It was every.
Yeah, since I've been
every
here,
year, I
that's
think
what
we
it's
got
been,
it.
we've been following the same procedure.
And for Mr. Parra, the question had to do with school starting dates and so forth,
So
so
he can put it out there.
nothing earth-shattering, I think.
Half day to last till school, Eric. That'll make everybody else happy. You write that, just make it a headline.
Any other comments?
I think of 3 things. I'll try to be fast through each one of them. Oh, sorry.
Mr. Townsend, go ahead.
First is a suggestion, and I'm curious if the board would be willing to grant this and participate. I would like to start once a month on Saturdays, what you might call a board whiteboard session. We don't have a lot of time to talk to each other in kind of a brainstorming or whiteboarding way to trade notes about what we're hearing out there in the public. So my thinking is maybe the last Saturday of the month or the middle Saturday of the month, whatever, we meet from 9 to 11 if we want to, anybody who could come, and we just sit around and talk about things that aren't immediate, perhaps, you know, like how do we build connections with physics program at Florida State, or you know, things that are not of immediate necessity. And yes, this would have to be a public meeting. It would have to be taped and all that. Yeah.
My thought was I could not do Saturday mornings because of my business,
Okay.
because I'm open. But I think your thought is well taken. What if on the opposite Tuesday, when we meet from 9 to 12, that may be 1 to 2 or 1 to 3?
Yeah, then you kind of run into I mean,
Okay, I just brought it up, that's all.
well, I mean, why don't we do both? Like, again, not everybody has to come to everyone.
Exactly.
Like, it's, you know, if and the concern, I think, for me, is what burden it will put on staff, and frankly, I don't really want staff to come. I mean, no offense, I mean, you're welcome to come, but it's like,
Just a round table.
just turn on the tape, so
Right.
so we meet our legal obligations, and then let us talk, and things that come up out of those meetings, we can then bring back to. I can't really do it during the week. It would have to be a weekend for me, because that takes pressure off. But I'm open to having 2. You know, one that's on a Tuesday, one that's on a Saturday. If people think that's a good idea.
Ms. Sellers?
I would say not at the end of this year because of what's going on. There are so many activities, nightly, weekend activities. I'm triple
April, May,
booked,
yeah.
yes. But starting next year.
I mean, what about June? You know, after anybody
Well,
got a problem?
if people can come, I'm going to be out of town a lot in June, because July we have those meetings, and so I've already got time in June scheduled. But
well, it's just a place for us to have a chance to talk to each other in a way that we can't talk to each other. We don't have to have all 7. It can be 2 of us having. I mean, no votes are going to get taken. Again, when we will be very specific, there won't even be an agenda. It's just get together and talk. I certainly wouldn't be able to attend them all. I mean, but let's give ourselves a chance to talk to each other in a way that we don't really get a chance to do. I think that's. I mean, is the board amenable to this idea as a concept?
Mr. Harris?
In the words of a former board member, I perceive this as an opportunity for board members to get into the weeds of management, and that is not our purview.
Is there majority support for this idea and conceptually? I mean, is it 6 to 1? I mean,
I think it's a good idea, but I don't know how I'm going to get there. I'm swamped. On Saturdays in particular are tough for me.
Yeah, I can't do Saturday either.
well, then we need to make it a weekday. I mean, most of the people are, Saturdays are hard. I will tell you, Saturdays
many
will be
events.
hard for me because of.
Best opportunity for me to do something like that would be on the Tuesday.
Right,
where
we're already
meeting in
here.
the morning,
Think
and
even
we're
if we
already
start
here.
with an extra hour.
Yeah.
Good gracious. There's been sometimes we were done at 11. Good gracious.
Yeah.
To go till noon.
Well, but except those things get exhausting. I mean, look, we want to do that. That's fine. I'm open to it. I just think it'll be another hour added on to the agenda stuff. Like, as opposed to a thing where there's no pressure and we're able to just talk to one another. I mean, I would be open. I just don't think I'm going to be able to do it during the week. If there's a way to do it, maybe at night, you know, like at 6 on a. The idea is to separate it from the regular board meetings, so we're not exhausted, you know. But I mean, if that's what it takes to try, then I'm open to that too.
Let's start with that and see how that goes. Would we be open to that? But, I mean, no, and it's optional.
Right.
Once the meeting's over, folks don't have to
You can
stay.
stay, you can stay if you can't that day, you have an obligation.
Right. So if we have a meeting at 10, I mean, I'm sorry, a meeting at noon or a work session at 12:30, we'd what, meet at 10 just to have a.
Well, I think we're talking
No,
about
the
every
opposite.
other.
Remember the days we only come from 9 to 12, 9 to 11?
Uh-huh.
The opposite Tuesday?
When we don't have a board meeting.
When we don't have a board meeting, that's what I'm
Okay.
saying.
Not a board meeting.
And then just after that, if it ends at 11 or 11:30?
Okay, so after it's done.
Yes.
Okay.
So I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So after all the discussion is had, what's gonna happen with the information that's gathered? What are we gonna do with it?
It gets taped, and I guess there are minutes requirements, right? And if there are good questions or good ideas that come out of it, we push it up the ladder. I mean, it's how we get the temperature of the people. I mean, I want to know what you guys hear. I mean, I don't hear a lot. I mean, we don't have time here. You know, I just think it's, who knows what comes out of it. But I hope good ideas would come out of it.
I'm just trying to figure out who does the work, because if we're gonna have discussion, is it gonna be sent back to the staff to do the work, or is it just for us to just share ideas and no action taken, or is it a combination of both?
There's no action.
Yeah, there's I mean, the action that I could see coming out of it is if we had some questions that emerged from staff that after we've talked to each other about particular issue, okay, this is a good question to ask staff, and then we can submit a question to them. I don't envision any particular directives coming out of it. It's much more what we think, what are the possibilities, things that we can accomplish, a chance for self-criticism, like what do we think we're doing well, what do we think we can improve on. You know, I think there's a million ways it could go, and I don't particularly want to put a structure on it. It's just a way for us to spend some time talking things out.
Okay. I mean, if nothing else, it could be a continuation of the board comments, and we could just approach from that perspective. I know you want a clean start, and we could talk about things we wouldn't otherwise talk about. It seems like since we went to the one board meeting a month, that at times it has been a little constrained on the comments. We've been pushed a little, so maybe it's just an extension of that.
I mean, we just can't talk about educational philosophy at all. Anyway,
Yeah.
Really, I mean, there's very little opportunity to do that. There's, you know, and I'm just trying to think of ways to not always be reacting to everything, to think ahead.
We'll give that a try and see how it works.
Should we have any legal advice in regards to sunshine?
Oh, it will be in the
It has
sunshine.
to be taped, yeah.
In regards to having an agenda?
It'll have to be noticed, but what I'm hearing is it's not a regular or a special meeting of the school board. It's more akin to your work sessions where there are no action items.
It's like
but I do believe
board comments, board discussion.
Yeah. I don't think there would be. It's more
getting in the weeds.
Yeah.
Well, you can stay out of them, man. I mean, you're not required to take part.
Should not be getting into management.
Well, I get to decide what I get into.
No, I don't think so.
Well,
That's
we'll
policies.
see.
Well, in any event, I'll circle the wagons to see if an agenda would be useful. What I would suggest, if you're going to do this, it would be wise to do it in a place where, number one, it can be recorded, and I would suggest that you have a staff member there for the purpose of taking minutes. And you know, I was thinking about the possibility of taking minutes from a recording. I'm not sure that would meet the letter and the spirit of that requirement. So it would be good to have, at least have a staff member there to take minutes.
Okay. Other?
So, yeah, I got a couple other things. Two, I would like us to discuss the Aramark contract at some point soon in our work session somewhere. Apparently we have missed a deadline that would have been April 1st to non-renew without penalty to even discuss that. I don't know what the substance of the penalty might end up being or not being. I'm hearing dissatisfaction with the maintenance of the equipment, the way the service is being run. There's a specific measure in which our custodians are asked to handle more square footage than DOE recommends. Those may all be completely legitimate things to go through. But I think it's a good thing to discuss. I think we just heard a charter school talk about how much money it saved by not outsourcing something.
So when does that contract come before the board, Madam Superintendent? Do we know offhand?
The contract is up for renewal this July this year.
Contract, it is a 5-year contract. The current contract will come to an end June 30th of this year. If there was going to be a recommendation for non-renewal, that needed to be brought no later than April 1st.
Without penalty?
Well, contract doesn't talk about penalties. If you terminate the contract, there's going to be damages, and we'll have to negotiate what those are.
So,
court tells.
Will this new contract be another 5 years?
Yes, sir. Yeah, they're 5-year contracts.
That was my reaction too.
Well, bear in mind that the board did this deliberately. When they entered into this contract, it was a 5-year contract with renewal periods because each one of these involves an investment of equipment that amortizes over time, and so the value of the equipment is factored into it. And when they did it the first time, there was a detailed analysis over the costs and benefits of bringing it inside or leaving it outside. And if the superintendent, if there was dissatisfaction and the superintendent wished to bring you a recommendation, I'm sure she would have.
Ms. Sellers?
I understand. Actually, when a contract this big, when you're what I'm amazed at, in the last couple of years, nobody's made a complaint to me. And I talked to the superintendent because I had the opportunity to read your article. It popped up. I don't read them all, but that one did. Nobody's complained to the superintendent. They've complained to you, but you know what we went through. I mean, this was not a rubber stamped contract to begin with. There was discussion. I met with Aramark. We had discussion. We met with the union. But I'm dismayed that the union did not bring anything to the superintendent. Now, some of what you said today, we've heard before. But lately they haven't. So a contract this big, if you're not going to renew, you start talking about it a year in advance, because we found out before, financially it's not feasible for us to get back into, not in our current economic situation, get back into the custodial business because of the huge cost of us buying all of the equipment. So I understand, but I have a concern that the superintendent has not heard any complaints, nor have I, because I would have brought them to the superintendent. People have been very quiet. Now they brought them to you, but in the past, they've brought them to us. I understand, I know you don't, a lot of people don't like multiple year contracts, but the cost is greatly decreased if you go into a 5-year contract, if you want a shorter year contract.
I think Mr. Harris had some comments.
Thank you. This is an issue that I have addressed in the past because I have had multiple people share with me their frustrations of some of the things that Aramark or its local leadership is doing. I brought this to Kathy's attention. I actually took Kathy to one of our shops and had her meet with about 15 people from that shop in regards to this very issue. Question I have for Wes, is it possible that we give them a one-year probationary contract, since it appears that maybe there are multiple people who have concerns about this service?
Right now, there was an April 1st deadline to notify them if you intended to non-renew.
That's different than a one-year.
That has passed. Well, right now, they're, and I'm not advocating for them, but the way I see this panning out is right now they will say you didn't notify us by April 1st, therefore we have a 5-year contract beginning July 1. And if we wanted to negotiate something else, we could anticipate that there would be a cost associated with that. And I don't know what there is.
Well, I have, and I'm sure those who have been on the board a while have heard me say this, mentioned that it was a very poor decision that the district made when it entered into the original service master contract, not because it went outside to seek services, because the way it did that service, because it did not give itself a back door. When the district entered into the contract with Service Master, it got rid of all of its equipment without knowing whether Service Master, now Aramark, was going to provide an adequate level of service over a period of time. We are now backed into a corner because now we have no equipment and would have to go out and purchase all the equipment in order to provide the same level of service. So yes, it is an expensive option if we were to choose to go back into the business. But as I've mentioned before, and one of the folks in facilities did this study, if an outside entity has to pay income tax and has to pay profit to its owners, how in the world can a government entity not compete when it has to pay none of those two items? If you can't compete, there's something wrong with your pay structure, and you should adjust your pay structure to be more competitive. We took half of our large area maintenance or mowing back in-house because of that very philosophy, because facilities bid on half of the large area mowing with that understanding and came in under budget of what the outside contractor was doing, and that's why we have part of it in and part of it out. But this isn't a new issue. This has been going on for a while.
Mrs. Fields?
Well, I think we need to go back and look at the analysis that was done. I wasn't involved with the service master. That was before my time on the board. I was involved when we had the analysis done and looked at the cost of the equipment and whether or not we could afford it at that time. We couldn't afford it. I think that in addition to this, we need to hear from all the employees that are affected. Do a survey. Why can't you do an anonymous survey and let the employees tell us what they want? Miss Jackie has gone and met with maintenance before. She hasn't heard any complaints. Doesn't mean that there aren't any, but rather than taking it from us, take it from the people that's impacted by it. And then I'll go from there. Might not be immediate, but it's something that we can look at long term.
I had one of the folks suggest that very thing to me this week, that had been sharing concerns with me, that we do an anonymous survey.
Ms. Cunningham?
And I agree totally, and I think there may be one going out shortly.
Absty asked if we would ask our teachers about their, the cleanliness of their classrooms and their students.
Sure.
Because we're getting a lot of complaints
Sure.
about that, frankly.
And custodians too.
And so we,
yeah.
so we agreed that we would do that.
Do something like that. And my comment was this: holy cow! If we have a contract with somebody and the contract states this, if they're not performing to that, then somebody needs to call their hand out at it. Is there a, I mean, reverter clause is not the right word, but what is the word?
Well, you can terminate for breach.
Good. Okay, so if they're not providing these types of services.
Well, first thing you got to do is there's got to be a mechanism for bringing those complaints to the attention.
Correct, of the superintendent.
So that you can
Correct.
address them.
I understand, but I'm just saying, if there's that many that I'm hearing.
You can always terminate a contract for breach and go argue about it.
So that information needs to be brought forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think if we could add this to a work session,
and continue the discussion. Could we do that, Madam Superintendent?
I think the first thing is to get out there that if you have issues,
Right.
right,
Yes.
get the survey and then.
Well, the contract, I mean, it's probably too late. If,
Well, we're past the deadline for sending a notice that we were not going to renew.
that means we
Of
can
course,
only
they,
renew.
well,
Without damages.
bear in mind, if you were going to do that, this contract ends June 30th and you don't have a follow-on contract in place. And a contract of this size and magnitude is likely to draw several vendors, and you have the likelihood, substantial likelihood of a protest that would draw that process out. Really, if you're going to non-renew a contract like this, it's well to think about that a year out so that you have time to run an acquisition process. The other thing to bear in mind is that anytime you give up an existing contract, you lose the benefit of that contract. I'm not here to suggest what the new contract might look like, but typically costs go up when you enter into a new contract, not down.
They need to be held to account.
And what I am suggesting is that we start that process.
Sure.
Right.
A year out, let's start it. Let's start doing things we need to do to document, to move forward.
And then see what our options are.
And then see what our options are. I mean, I will offer that I too have heard a number of complaints from folks, and you know, I even talked to one individual who does flooring, does a significant amount of flooring for Disney, and he had suggested that some years ago he had offered to free of charge to put some flooring in the district, because the flooring they're using, not only is it, in his opinion, inferior, but it also is extremely difficult to clean, making the cost of cleaning increase as well. And this individual's offered to come back and demonstrate that for us if we want to do that at some point in time. But the point is, I think, I mean, I've also heard the concern, so I think it is important that we listen to our employees and what they're saying and what they're telling us.
I think the survey, though, needs to be twofold. And I'm glad to hear that you guys have been approached by ASME from a service point of view. I think the survey that was requested or suggested to me was from the service provider's point of view, surveying the custodial and yard maintenance folks, in addition to the people who receive the service. That's two different viewpoints.
Yeah,
Right. Two different surveys.
And I cautioned one individual who was sharing with me, there's a difference between the Aramark service and these employees who are custodians working for us. If they're not doing the things on the checkoff list, shame on them as an employee. The Aramark managers, though, shame on them if they're not holding their feet to the fire. So there's two different issues going on here, and I tried to make sure that they understood. Don't complain to me about an Aramark issue if it's an employee issue. That's different than an Aramark contract issue. I'm trying to make sure that the custodial folks and grounds maintenance people understand the difference. It's important.
Other comments? Yes, sir.
One last thing, concerning the Lake Wales High School roll up. Let's strike roll up from the language a second. Very quickly. It sure seems like you know, apparently the cooperation between McLaughlin and Bok is pretty good right now. Sure seems like we could get Donna Johnson or somebody to go into McLaughlin and register the kids in McLaughlin that would normally be zoned to have the right zip code. I mean, there's no law here. It's you just walk in and spend a day making sure everybody's signed up. So that'd be step one.
If they were allowed.
Right. And then step two, have a protocol in place at Haines City High or Winter Haven High when they get a kid from a Lake Wales school. Hey, you guys aware that you could go to Lake Wales High, go back to Lake Wales High?
Frostproof.
Or yeah, same.
But a lot opt for frostproof.
Right. I'm not trying to be exclusive here. And then the third part of this, which is probably the one that's the legally most thorny, but I'm very curious about, is what busing we can refuse to provide. And I don't have to answer that here. I know there's but do we have to bus the kids to Winter Haven and Haines City? I'm kind of unclear on that answer. But I think if we were gonna try to get all Lake Wales kids into Lake Wales High, those 3 steps are, I mean, the first 2 we can do without any requirement. You know, we don't have to, the third is something we could do some research on. That's my suggestion, so.
So we're running out of time, but here,
Right.
could we add this as an agenda item? Because I think there are probably a number of questions that I have as well. Would that be okay for the next work session?
I'll look at the, I'm gonna make some sense. We got Mike coming with budget. You wanna couple that all together?
Well, I think we need to have a discussion about it, because I have I had some questions earlier, and I still have some questions about the issue. I have a couple of quick announcements that I think are very important. We've got discipline, the strategic planning retreat, as you all know, is want to make sure that's on everybody's calendar scheduled for September 25th. You okay with that?
September 25th?
September 25th.
September, you said?
Yes, sir.
I don't have that on the calendar.
Good.
It is scheduled?
Well, we'd like to schedule.
Oh, you'd like to? Okay.
That's what he's asking.
September 25th.
I was hoping I could push that through as a yes, it's been scheduled, but if not, no.
So this is our,
Not a board meeting date?
No, because it's the first and third one
It's not a board meeting day.
Tuesdays because we have to meet in
Yeah.
that Tuesday after Labor Day, right?
what time, 9 to something? I don't know, I
I
guess
think
you'll tell us
Yeah.
later.
9 to 12, here, 9 to
You
12.
put those on your 9 to 12?
I think that's what he had.
Did you?
I might be wrong. I'll look. Don't write the time.
Just 3 hours?
Because I got other meetings that we talking
Okay.
about.
Would also like to begin the process for staff evaluation soon. I want to give everybody a heads up on that. Would like to have those done by June 29. Can we meet that deadline? We'll at least get started.
Yes.
Somebody will send us something.
Just do it.
Yes. Or so-
Send them to us.
We'll send those things out. All right, just very quickly, there's been some confusion, I think, with the press, and not necessarily the Ledger, and some folks in the community about the half-cent sales tax committee. There are actually 2 committees. On the one hand, there's the half-cent sales tax PAC, Political Action Committee, and on the other hand, there's the half-cent sales tax Oversight Committee. And when I served as liaison to the half-cent sales tax Oversight Committee, I was concerned that they were much too in the weeds and possibly violating some law. So that's when you were asked to come in and talk to them at that time. So there's that issue. Secondarily, the consultant to the PAC, the consultant they've been working with, has suggested that those 2 committees be kept entirely separate, that they not intermingle in any way, shape, or form, mostly because it creates an independence issue in the eyes of the public. At some point in time, those folks, the half-cent sales tax oversight committee, are going to be asked to validate or verify that all of that money has been spent as indicated. And if there's a sense that they are promoting that effort, then the concern is that it will be perceived as if they're both promoting the effort and validating, that it will invalidate their independence. So they're suggesting those 2 be kept completely separate. Just want to give everybody a heads up on that, because I know there have been some concerns from the members of the half-cent sales tax oversight committee. They very much want to get involved, and understandably so. But the idea, their sense is that if you keep those separate, when it comes time for them to say, hey, every penny of that money has been spent as it was intended, and if they're also promoting that, it could give a sense of them impairing their independence.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
So, yes, ma'am.
I think we need more time on this, because it's almost 4:45, and I have some questions on it. I know that the PAC and the Sales Tax Oversight Committee should be separate. That's the way it was before. Mr. Berryman and his group did it separately from the board at that time. I don't, again, I think it's just gonna take too much conversation for us to be able to do this today. So maybe it might be something that we can put on the agenda for the next time. I'm not really sure. You said it's urgent, but I do.
Oh, it's not necessarily urgent. I was just giving an update.
Time is of the essence in this.
Yeah, we can add it to the next agenda and continue to have conversation about it, sure, absolutely.
Because I think that we had already given them some written guidelines that Wes had said what they could and could not do. The
Yes, ma'am.
Sales Tax Oversight Committee.
And I would be happy to attend a meeting and talk about that. And probably ought to, Mr. Wilson, sit down and develop an understanding of where the line is that the consultant suggests. Appearance-wise, it sounds like a very reasonable, to use a currently bad word, conservative approach to managing the appearance and making sure that we don't. Yeah, I'm not so concerned about actual conflicts or whatever as I am the appearance there. I think you do a pretty good job on the actuality, but on the appearances.
Well, I would offer that it's goes back to what you suggested earlier, that it's okay to educate, but it's not okay to advocate. And I think that was the line that was kind of, there was a perception that line was being crossed. And that's what they're suggesting. It's okay to educate, but perhaps not be a good idea for those folks to be advocating, which I think could be a problem with a legal issue as well, correct?
Conceivably.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, conceivably.
So we'll add it to a future agenda and speak for it. All right. Anything else? We're ready to adjourn to a discipline meeting?